Welcome everyone to the 5th part of the God of High School final season. We are finally back and would like to thank everyone's patience on the series. Starting from here, there will be a lot of action and story revelation that will be unpacked for you guys. Without any more delays, let's get right into it, starting with chapter 439. Part 5 of God of High School's final arc starts with Mujin having a quick flashback to a time when he was told to look at some shots of his precious project borrowed power. His reminiscence concludes when Mujin is told by Jonathan that there's no one to blame here but himself, that it's a trap he set up on his own. In the present, Mujin dashes through the corridors of his inner sanctum with Executive P in tow. Squads of world government agents are hot on their heels. The soldiers open fire on the two while they give chase, and we spot P clutching her stomach along the way. We then get the big reveal that P is actually carrying a bun in her oven. More specifically, she's already 6 months pregnant. The worst news is that the doctor told her that there's an 80% chance that her baby's going to come out with a deformity. So he suggested to just nip it in the bud and get an abortion as soon as possible if she doesn't want to be saddled with it. Instead, P told the doctor to just keep her pregnancy a secret from the world president for now while she thinks about her next move. In the present, world government soldiers are currently hunting down the few remaining forces still loyal to Mujin, Team Generation X. Right now, Team Generation X has split up into 2 teams. It doesn't matter though, because according to the world government soldiers, their top priority right now is to get to their primary target, Mujin. Not too far away, Executive P apologizes to Mujin for being dead weight, but Mujin tells her to stop all that nonsense because she's helped save his bacon numerous times in the past, especially more recently when P straight up tussled with Mori and all she got were a pair of wrecked hands as a reward. Mujin tells her that it's not her fault that they can't counter their enemy's anti-borrowed power weapons fast enough. But what Mujin doesn't tell P is that he currently knows they're in a pinch right now. As he puts it, the underground structure of Coax is a bit different from before. So Mujin concludes that this must be the side effect of restoring the holy place. The main problem is, at this rate, Mujin knows he and P might not be able to make it back to their main forces. A quick flashback reveals that he debriefed Team Generation X earlier to split up, considering that he's the main target of the enemy. Goodgun tries protesting against this decision, but Mujin overturns it as he tells these mutant kids that they're his last hope for the future of humanity. The long and short of it is that Mujin orders Team Generation X to split into 2 teams, and all of them could meet at a designated rendezvous point. In the present, Mujin desperately tells P to just hang on, since they'd be able to link up with Team Generation X soon, but he's forced to stop in his tracks when a grenade suddenly rolls in front of him. It explodes and leaves a hole in the ground that leads to the library. The soldiers follow suit and find an unconscious Mujin in the middle of the room. When one of them asks where P is, another soldier informs him that they've got her. P is currently knocked out too, but she soon recovers only to find out that she's been surrounded by the enemy. And these soldiers aren't messing around. They don't even say a single word before they proceed with their job, which is to open fire right in front of P at point-blank range. The soldiers unload their magazine on her. P takes a few hits, but our girl is able to use her powers to protect herself from getting gunned down right then and there. In a chilling sequence, one of the soldiers spots P trying to protect her stomach, which gives him a raging desire to shoot her some more. P's too weak to move, and the soldier gets ready to empty out another clip in her. But this idiot's gun suddenly gets wrecked when Mujin arrives just in time to protect his beloved executive. Mujin identifies the soldiers as members of Anti-Borrowed Power Special Squad 432, a presidential squad he worked so hard to plan and create ever since there were talks of a second Ragnarok. He then tells them that they should have known better than to spread themselves thin over a broad area like this and reminds them that they'll die if they let their guard down. Mujin prepares to blast them with his power. And while it seems that Anti-Borrowed Power Special Squad 432 needs more than a quick reminder, they need to go back to basic training. That's considering their solution to countering Mujin's upcoming attack is to spread out right after Mujin just told them they shouldn't have done that in a broad area like this. It doesn't matter though, because the world president unleashes his ability on these nameless fools right after. With several of their assailants dead, Mujin checks up on P and notices that the wounds she took from the soldiers earlier look really bad. Mujin tries to interrogate one of the surviving soldiers, asking him who their commander is, but the soldier just tells him to F himself because all Mujin needs to know is that he's dead meat. In turn, Mujin scares the living crap out of this aggressive bit player. The soldier flinches, but Mujin doesn't cave his face in with his gravitational power. Instead, he just tells the soldier to train harder when he gets back to base. After all, it's up to them to protect the rest of humanity in case another Ragnarok does happen in this bonkers universe. And sure, Mujin might be at odds with most of his own underlings right now, but the man knows how to put things in perspective. He reminds the soldier that humans have to look out for one another, because no one else would. Instead of a thank you though, Mujin gets a bullet through his gut just as he and P walk away from the scene. The next thing they know, they're already in the crosshairs of hundreds of other enemies off in the distance. We then get a quick update on this whole debacle, as we learn about a couple thousand people were wounded during the mess. But surprisingly enough, there are 0 casualties. Mujin listens in on this and is relieved to find out that no one died from this encounter. But there are more pressing matters to deal with. Mujin knows he can get past their enemies if he were alone, but he's not so sure about it now that he also has to protect P. All of a sudden, Dean emerges and tells Mujin that he and Team Generation X will continue serving him even though he knows that Mori wasn't the one behind the Great War that happened 17 years ago. After all, Dean and Team Generation X feel that they owe a debt of gratitude to Mujin for being the only person who paid attention to them. Team Generation X doesn't knock out the soldiers surrounding their boss though. Instead, they just form a human wall in front of P and Mujin in a move that can only be best described as solidarity over sound strategy. In turn, Mujin tells Team Generation X to stop each and every one of the anti-borrowed power squad members, but with the specific order to not kill a single one of them, since Mujin doesn't want to see his so-called proteges fighting each other. Dean obeys, but Han interrupts their conversation to basically inform the group that about 45,000 soldiers have already assembled outside the library. Han warns the world president that opening the door would lead to all hell breaking loose, but Mujin proceeds to do it. And as Han predicted, all hell does break loose when Nox agents, homeless people, and world government soldiers pour into the library and start having a melee. In the middle of the chaos, Mandoc makes himself known and goes on one of his fanatical speeches about their god while walking towards Mujin. The two soon come face to face. Mujin asks Mandoc where Mira is, and he tells him that she just eradicated an army 3 times the size of the soldiers here. But we soon find out Mandoc's real reason for coming here, as he asks Mujin to take his hand so that they can form an alliance. As Mandoc puts it, they're after the same thing, reviving the so-called Supreme God. Of course, Mujin refuses this proposal. He even takes this opportunity to throw some shade Mandoc's way, mocking him for still thinking he's the so-called Chosen One. Mandoc tries to keep things on track, as he asks Mujin if he really thinks he can defeat the combined forces of Mori, Daewoo, and Sujin by himself. Mujin agrees he might not be able to do it, but it's not like any of Mandoc's unnamed goons could help him out either. The point is, no means no, and he's not accepting Mandoc's offer. The story then goes to another flashback, as we find Ahan and Mori going on one of their usual strolls in the city. Ahan asks her big brother if he's alright. He says he is, and Mori's more worried about Daewoo's wounds from the blade of Tathagata. Ahan then asks if Mori's really friends with Daewoo and Mira before pointing to the giant Yoi pillar in the middle of the city. Mori suddenly falls silent, prompting Ahan to ask him what's wrong. Mori answers by trying to use his power to control the Yoi pillar, but it doesn't work. He starts moping and griping about how weak he's become. After all, Mori is well aware that he'd be helpless if Tathagata is revived as the Supreme God Maitreya and they get into a scuffle. Mori admits that he's scared of losing and getting hurt, but most of all, he's afraid that he'll end up becoming completely useless again. Our hero continues his pity party as he recalls the tragedies that have befallen his friends and family throughout God of High School's run, from Daewoo losing his eye to Mujin eliminating Taijin 17 years ago. Mori admits that he's strong, and that's pretty much the only thing he's good at. In turn, Ahan advises Mori to just run away from all this crap. After all, he's got a couple of insanely powerful friends in the form of Mira and Daewoo. They'll do just fine without his help. But Mori doesn't listen to any of this and instead insists he has to get his revenge on that bastard Mujin Park for what he did to his grandpa way back then. And at this point, Ahan just stops giving more advice and just tells her big brother to go kick Mujin's ass and make him really regret what he did. In the end, she tells her brother to stop fighting for other people and just fight for himself. This makes Mori go all sentimental, as he recalls the 3 best friends he's had in his life, Daewoo, Mira, and his old clone, Mori Huey. Ahan hears all this and gets jealous. What she doesn't tell Mori, however, is that she herself is scared of losing her big brother once this fight is over. Everything works out though, because Mori hugs Ahan in the end and tells her that they can live happily ever after once this whole mess with Mujin has been dealt with. In another flashback, Youngji Park finally remembers that Daewoo has a sister, Daryong, as the siblings finally reunite after 17 years. We know that this is the first time they're seeing each other again because Daryong is surprised to learn that Daewoo is still alive. But an even bigger surprise hits Daewoo when he notices his sister's kids, who he instantly recognizes to resemble Q. Q arrives and greets his brother-in-law only for Daewoo to make him bend the knee with his gravitational powers. Daryong asks Daewoo if he's going out there for another fight, and he says yes. Daryong gives her brother a hug and asks if this fight is for someone as important as his long-dead best friend, Song Tai. In answer, Daewoo tells her that the person he's fighting for now is more important than Sungtae. In any case, Daryong gives Daewoo her blessing, and we find out that Q's coming with him as a bodyguard. Although even Q himself knows that Daewoo doesn't need one. More importantly, we learn that Q's actually joining this fight because he aims to rescue Bongsa Sim. In the present, Daewoo and Mori stand in front of a manhole cover in the middle of the city. We then learn from Ilpyo that this spot is right above where Mujin and Mandok are. Down below in the library, Mandok surmises that Mujin is trying to use the resonance to change dead Tathagata into the supreme god Maitreya. Mandok then goes on a good old-fashioned speech about the 3 signs described in the Book of Prophecy. As he puts it, there's the sign of the beast, the son of man, and then the blood rain. Mandok then explains that the blood rain means one thing, a sacrifice. He then shows Mujin a switch bearing the Nox's emblem, and Mandok continues explaining that it's the same thing that Okwang used to steal humanity's life force with the energy stones in the past. Mandok reveals that he's been gathering and repairing these energy stones, which he then used to create his own army of undead Neo-Nox soldiers, although Mandok does admit that he's far from perfecting the energy stones. Mandok then tries to go for the hard sell and tell Mujin that he's going to need his energy stones if he plans on either reviving or destroying the supreme god. But Mujin is no sucker. He knows that Mandok's energy stones are faulty at best, and when Mandok tries explaining that he could have perfected them if the Jade Emperor's arc was still around, Mujin cuts him off and pretty much tells his rival how stupid he is for even suggesting that he'll use humanity's life force to further his own goals. Meanwhile, Mandok reveals that everything he's done ever since his first appearance in the series was all in the name of reviving his sister. As he puts it, it doesn't matter if it's Ultio-R, the Jade Emperor, Mira, or Tathagata. If any one of them could revive his sister, then he's going to serve them. Mandok goes for another hard sell, as he tries to gaslight Mujin into thinking that his alliance he's proposing is meant to help the world president get what he wants. But Mujin is not falling for any of it. He even goes so far as to lecture Mandok about his real motives. To be clear, Mujin never planned on reviving the supreme god. He's actually trying to do the opposite. That's because Mujin is pretty much aiming to bring humanity to its next evolutionary step with the help of Generation X. As he puts it, there are only 5 Generation X members who are battle-ready at the moment. But give or take a century and most of humanity will have the X gene in them. And right now, all Mujin has to do is make sure that he gets rid of anything that threatens humanity. At the top of his priority list, of course, is to seal away the supreme god. All this will eventually lead to a generation of peace. Mujin tells Mandok he's not taking any more proposals, which puts the 2 rivals at odds with each other again. They get into a standoff, while Dean notices that the Wi-Fi and the fallen soldiers around them have suddenly reactivated. But things get even more complicated when Mori and Daewoo suddenly burst through the manhole and into the library. They're not alone either. Our heroes are accompanied by a who's who of God of High School's renowned warriors, such as Sujin, Q, Xiao Chen, Ma Bora, and Gyeomji. And in the blink of an eye, another skirmish breaks out. This time, Sujin sends her ITF forces to deal with Mandok's henchmen. All the while, Mori focuses up and uses Yoi to carve a bloody path through Neo-Nox's ranks. Our hero uses a technique called repeating the commands, which is exactly as it sounds. He makes Yoi change sizes in quick succession to barrage his opponents. Sujin, on the other hand, has a more efficient way of dealing with these scrubs, as she transforms into her Pandora form and uses her plague ability to freeze everyone in her way. The fan service continues, as Daewoo unleashes his triple gravity technique to drop swaths of Mandok's forces to their knees. At the same time, Mandok notices how Mujin is getting all anxious about Mori's arrival, so he goes for one last-ditch effort to make him accept his alliance proposal. Mandok tells him to take his hand, while Mujin leaves P with Hyo and tells the mutant boy to give her a buff that would help heal her wounds. But Mujin doesn't take Mandok's hand and instead re-emphasizes that he's not going to work with him. Meanwhile, Hyo does one of his goofy dance rituals to apply a buff on P, but she refuses. Instead, she tells the boy to help out Mujin, as she has an internal monologue about how Generation X's power might affect the fetus incubating in her womb. Not too far away, Dean and Gutgun are absolutely slack-jawed upon witnessing Mori's skills. As a matter of fact, Dean can't believe that it's only been 6 months since he and Mori faced each other in battle, considering that his master now seems like a completely different person. More soldiers continue pouring into the library. Mujin takes note of this and prepares to spring his gambit. He does this by giving O the order to attack once each and every one of their enemies are within his line of fire. At the exact moment, O summons Chang's 6 offsprings, and a huge red dragon appears behind him. The dragon charges up its fiery breath, but Sujin already knows this is exactly what O has been planning. In fact, she even criticizes him for making this move his default play. the same scheme he used 17 years ago. So Sujin easily protects everyone from the Dragonfire with her Pandora's armor, Hope ability. Sujin then tells Mori to do what he needs to do while she deals with O. Now remember when we told you that O summoned Chang-6 offsprings? That's offspring with an S, plural. Well, wrong grammar aside, O reveals that he's not using his old play this time, as we find out that there's also an entire swarm of Chang-6 offspring flying above the city. The entire nest of fire-breathing creatures then blast Sujin and her allies from above. But this all amounts to nothing too, as Sujin once again protects everyone with her abilities. And Chang-6 offspring aren't going to get away that easily either, because none other than God of High School's best boy has arrived, Heite. Heite doesn't waste time to bring the beat down on these scaly foes, as the mythical lion dog starts biting and headbutting every dragon in his way. But even a fearsome unit like Heite can only do so much against an entire nest of Chang-6's offspring. Our boy gets overwhelmed a few moments later. Down at the library, Mujin watches Mori take out one of Chang-6's offspring with Yoi. The world president gets super frustrated after he realizes that Mori's looking more perfect than before. And once Mori's done with the dragon, our hero makes a beeline for Mujin. Mujin, on the other hand, doesn't back down. He explicitly accepts Mori's challenge and prepares to tussle with him. Team Generation X tries to block Mori's path when they see him close in on Mujin. In turn, our hero activates Jin Mori mode and tells the kids to stay out of his way before casually taking a swipe with Yoi. Mori doesn't even target the members of Team Generation X. He slices up Mujin's face and takes out one of his eyes instead. Mujin screams in pain, while Mori tells him one of the most cold-blooded lines in the series so far. That first hit was for Daewoo, but Mujin still has lots of debt left to pay. Dean is just astonished at that same moment. According to him, he did see Mori's move coming with his precognitive ability, but it is what it is. He wasn't able to stop it. The hairs on the back of Dean's neck stand as he realizes that this is really not the same guy he used to roll with not so long ago. Still, if there's one thing we all know about Dean, it's that he's a trooper. Our boy doesn't so much back down as he does become more determined to catch up to his old master's skills. Meanwhile, Mujin screams in agony after Mori sliced up one of his eyeballs. Pete tries to check up on her boss, but one of their agents stops her from getting in Mori's line of fire. Curiously enough, Mujin's pendant suddenly starts glowing after receiving a few drops of blood. Unknown to most of the people in the library, Tathagata's corpse on the moon has also started to awaken. Mandoc is the first to realize what's going on. He raises his head to see that the third part of his bonkers prophecy has come, the Blood Moon. This makes Mandoc even more determined to keep Mujin alive. But keep in mind, guys, this isn't out of the goodness of his heart. Mandoc simply needs Mujin to stay alive until the rapture comes. So this white-haired zealot tells his disciples to do whatever it takes to protect Mujin, at the very least, until he gets to the underground holy place safely. Not a moment passes when Mandoc's soldiers transform into grotesque beasts, while Daewoo's Neonox agents brace themselves for a battle. Above ground, Sujin takes out O's dragons one by one. But our girl gets frustrated when she notices these winged monsters' ranks don't seem to dwindle in spite of her efforts. Xiao Chen arrives on the scene and tells Sujin to break the deal on her borrowed power so she can help deal with the dragons. But it appears Sujin still hasn't gotten this whole alliance memo, as she refuses to heed Xiao Chen's request. As Sujin puts it, she doesn't trust a bishop like Xiao Chen one bit, even if they're helping each other out in the skirmish right now. Down at the library, a few unnamed Neonox scrubs almost get to Mujin, but their assassination attempt falls flat when Mandoc takes him out with his trademark swords. And at this point, both Mujin and Mandoc form an unlikely alliance to fend off their attackers, regardless of how they feel about each other. Still, it might not be enough, because the next hit that Mujin takes comes straight from our main man, Mori. Mori extends Yoi until it pierces Mujin's shoulder. Our hero then prepares to pop the world president like a cherry by expanding his staff size while it's lodged in Mujin. But Team Generation X's resident staff expert, Bongram Seo, gets in on the action just in time to deflect Yoi before it can mangle Mujin's body. And if you guys remember, this young martial artist isn't using a regular wooden stick anymore. Her weapon's made from the distilled essence of Adom and Adam, the two annoying Generation X kids that Doosa Kim dunked on about a half a year ago. Bongram uses her staff's high-frequency vibration ability to withstand Yoi's force and weight. Mori can't believe she has a weapon capable of doing this. On the bright side, both Mori and Bongram finally realize that they've met each other before, back at the forest when she gave her hero some pointers on how to swing a staff. There's no time for pleasantries though, as Mori next launches Yoi straight into Goodgun's face. Goodgun thinks he can handle it. He's their team's tank after all. It's the same reason why he gets annoyed with Dean when he suddenly forces Goodgun to duck just as Yoi was about to smack him in the face. Good Gun protests, but Dean tells him he'd thank him if he had the ability to see a second into the future. Meanwhile, Mori spots Dean, and the two old buddies actually seem pleased that they'd get to tussle once again. But then, Dean's precognition suddenly kicks in. It even extends to all the other Generation X members, and it's one disturbing vision of the immediate future, that Mori is going to drive his hand right into Mujin's chest. Dean and each Team Generation X member realize that Mori really isn't playing around when it comes to killing the world president. So they mobilize and prepare to gang up on our hero to prevent him from getting his hands on Mujin. In turn, Mori casually drops Yoi on the ground and just hurls each and every one of his attackers with a classic recoilless basic kick. The Monkey King then lunges at Mandoc and peppers him with a trio of techniques, from his recoilless Hala to Baekdu to Tai Bek, a combination that's ultimately called Mori's recoilless triple mountain combo. He makes short work of Mandoc and easily reaches Mujin's spot. To the world president's credit, he's not backing down. Mori obliges and prepares to stab Mujin in the gut with his bare hand, the same vision that Dean and Team Generation X saw just now. So Dean jumps in to try and block Mori's attack, but Mujin shoves him away and allows himself to get skewered. When Dean asks why, Mujin simply repeats what he's been telling all of Team Generation X this whole time, that they're the future and there's no way he's going to let them get killed. Meanwhile, Mori tells Mujin that one of their healers can help him as long as he doesn't remove his hand from his chest. All Mori wants in return is for his sworn enemy to answer one thing. Why did Mujin betray him 17 years ago? Mujin answers, and it's one that even Dean feels absolutely shocked to hear. That Mujin killed Taijin and screwed over Mori simply because the Monkey King wasn't human. That's reason enough for him. And make no mistake, Mujin isn't accepting any favors from his perceived nemesis either. He spits blood right in Mori's face and eyes after answering the question. From there, Mujin tears through our hero, telling him that he never once considered Mori as an ally during the events of Ragnarok. Long story short, Mori stands for everything that humanity stands against. As a matter of fact, Mujin's so confident that humanity's going to destroy the gods soon enough that he even talks trash at Mori, telling our hero to enjoy the small victory while it lasts. Well, Mori's clearly affected after hearing all this, so he takes back his offer for medical help and pulls out his hand from Mujin's chest, letting the world president bleed to death right then and there. As Mori puts it, this is for his grandfather. God of High School then moves the clock back 34 years in the past, at a time when Mujin and the Six got their butts handed to them after tussling Jin Taijin. Mujin sulks about the loss and starts doubting the prophet, about how he was destined to be a king who rules and changes the world. Mujin thinks that his own borrowed power is ultimately useless, but his pity party is interrupted when a white-haired boy in a wheelchair approaches and tells him that the more disappointed he is, the more he wants. This boy happens to be none other than Mandoc, and this whole flashback sequence just shows us his first meeting with Mujin. During this time, Mandoc introduced himself to Mujin by pretty much giving him a pep talk about how his borrowed power is a blessing and that his recent defeat to Taijin is all part of the process of moving on to greater things. Mujin eventually shoos away Mandoc when he mentions the fight with Taijin, and it's here we meet Mandoc's sister, Mansuk, who Mujin mistakes as another fangirl who wants his autograph. But no, Mansuk doesn't want his signature. She wants to slap him in his arrogant face for looking down on Mandoc. In the present, Mori ignores Dean's pleas to spare Mujin's life. Meanwhile, the world president wonders if this really is the end of the line for him. Mujin's life flashes before his eyes, mainly about how R told him to keep his promise. Mujin thinks he's done his part to fulfill it though, and all things considered, he doesn't mind dying here and now. In no way does this mean Mujin's just hanging up the proverbial gloves, however. As is always the case with him, Mujin musters up every bit of remaining energy in his body to remind himself that he's Mujin Park, the youngest member of the Six and the toughest man alive. Mujin thinks this is his last mission, to take down Mori with him. So the world president raises his bionic arm for one last strike, but Mori easily dismantles it with his Taekwondo moves, so Mujin transitions to his other arm. Mori notices that his enemy is about to bust out one of Daewi's techniques, while Mujin entrusts everything in this final strike. He applies force on Mori's chest, but nothing ultimately happens with Mujin's gambit. The world president just falls to the ground and dies amidst P's desperate screams. A moment later, Mori wonders if he's really finished his job. Dean approaches him and the boy's terrified. Mori notices that even Dean now sees him as a monster. Their standoff amounts to nothing though, because Good Gun suddenly jumps in and punches Dean in the face for failing to protect their boss. On the other hand, Mori realizes that Mujin might not be the completely evil man he once thought he was. After all, each and every member of Team Generation X treated Mujin like their savior, almost as if he was their very own version of Jin Taijin. In the middle of the library, Pete desperately calls for Mujin to wake up. Mandoc approaches and notices that Mori has literally obliterated Mujin's heart. Of course, Mandoc's not having this. He still needs Mujin to revive his supreme god after all. So Mandoc uses his powers to try and resurrect Mujin from the dead. His initial efforts don't do anything though, and Mandoc realizes that Mujin himself doesn't want to go on living. But this crazy Nox Bishop has other plans. So he stabs himself with his own hand and grabs his own heart before transferring it into Mujin. Not too far away, Dewi senses Mira's presence. A short flashback reveals that Mori and Dewi split up the responsibilities prior to diving into the library. Namely, Mori's going to deal with Mujin, while Dewi is in charge of retrieving Mira. In the present, Sujin tells Dewi he coordinates to where Mira's headed for next. We also find out that she knows this because she has sent Mansak to spy on the Witch of the West this whole time. Sujin then tells Dewi to stop messing around here and just go deal with Mira. Dewi obliges and leaves, while Sujin gets ready to tussle with their enemies once more. And just so everybody knows, she's not some soft South Korean who goes by their ridiculous no-killing policy. She's North Korean, so she's not above committing a few atrocities here and there to get the job done. It's also here where we learn that Sujin has dealt with all the dragons that O summoned earlier. Meanwhile, Mandoc continues to resurrect Mujin with his powers. The momentum is broken, however, when God of High School goes for another flashback. This time, it's about O's origin story. The long and short of it is that O is on the spectrum and he finds it easier to make friends with animals than other people his whole life. He first met the red dragon Changshik back when he was a kid, and a few years later, O fashioned himself into a warrior who aims to challenge the red dragons in hopes of becoming their friend. Long story short, O and the red dragon got into it. O won and everybody's friends now. We all know the rest of the story at this point. O became an executive working for Mujin, and the rest is history. On the other hand, we do get the reveal that O happens to be one of the few characters in the world government who genuinely felt bad for screwing over Mori and their former allies. However, O does make it clear that he'd side with Mujin regardless of the circumstances. This mainly stems from the fact that O absolutely hates the gods for slaughtering the red dragons simply because they didn't like these powerful beasts. On top of that, Mujin promised him that he was going to create a world where humans and dragons can live in harmony together. In the present, O steps up to Xiao Chen and marks her as his primary target, mainly because she annihilated both Changshik and Hosek's families in the past. O then uses a technique called the Skill of the Key, Sealed Borrowed Power, and Sujin can't believe that she can't use her sealing ability on the world government executive. In turn, Q reveals that the reason Sujin's power doesn't work on O is because he's not even using his borrowed power. He's just simply summoned a family of dragons because they're friends. This effectively makes O a dragon master. And as Q puts it, the only way to seal O's borrowed power is to destroy each and every one of the dragons that O has summoned just now. However, Q does warn Sujin that although O might be mentally weak, he's the strongest among all the executives. As Q puts it, O actually managed to win the first God of High School tournament, where he beat other executives like R, T, K, and even Q himself. The long and short of it is that O is a problem, and it's rumored that he can be invincible whenever he feels like it. On the bright side, we do learn that Q has managed to come face to face with Sim Bongsa. Meanwhile, O tells his dragon kids to summon their dragon army. The dragon kids take a bite out of their own fingers and raise the dead bodies peppered all around the library, their so-called dragon troops. At the same time, Mori's not going to give Mandoc and P a chance to bring Mujin back to life, so he charges at them at full tilt. Good Gun stands in our hero's way, prompting Mori to get even more enraged after seeing kids like him protect someone like Mujin. Meanwhile, Han gives Dean an ultimatum. He can either side with the world president or Mori. Either way, Han tells Dean there's no way he can just stand around and remain on the fence about this. Mori easily gets past Good Gun, but he stops on his tracks when he spots his clone, Mori Jung, standing nearby. Jung cryptically tells Mori that he doesn't like seeing the two of them fight like this, but Mori has no time for riddles. Because right now, all our hero wants to do is make sure Mujin stays dead. Realizing he has no time, Mori summons Yoi and busts out his railgun technique to shoot down Mujin. Dean can see the future happening, but all he can do is accept the fact that he can't do anything to stop it. Meanwhile, Han declares her full support for Mujin, as she transforms and forms a barricade between Yoi and Mujin using the wires and pipes around the library. And to Han's credit, she has a point. Even though she's not sure that Mori actually caused Ragnarok, she's correct in thinking that the Monkey King might be a grave threat against humankind if he directed his rage at them. The same goes for all the gods and monsters out there. Han's point is, if threats like these exist, then humanity should be prepared to fight against them. Ha shares the same feelings, so much so that he tells Dean to take off his mask if Mujin comes back to life. In any case, Ha puts on his mask and he gets a power boost from it. Dean, on the other hand, urges his Generation X teammates to stop what they're doing, since he knows Mori can easily crush them. But they don't heed their squad leader's words. Instead, He and Han go on a trip down memory lane and basically declare their unquestioning loyalty towards Mujin. After all, he's the man who said that they were his future. He and Han then proceed to clash with Mori. Our hero easily knocks out He, but he gets worried that he might accidentally kill these kids if he doesn't do something soon. On the bright side, this allows Han to find an opening that allows her to subdue Mori with her wires, even if just for a moment. While this is happening, Mandoc continues to work his magic on Mujin, while P whispers in his ear. She tells Mujin that he can't die because he's about to be a dad soon. Mandoc reaches critical mass with his technique as he fully transforms and revives Mujin. Of course, this all culminates in a good old-fashioned explosion. And when the dust settles, Mujin comes back to the land of the living. On a darker note, the first thing that Mujin sees after getting resurrected is Han getting torn to shreds right before his very eyes after she takes the full force of Mori's Yoi railgun technique. Han's not the only one to get absolutely creamed from Mori's devastating technique though. For one, even He gets knocked out from overexertion, and although Mori's railgun ultimately misses its mark, he is able to hit Mandoc and sever the Zealot's arm. Of course, none of this is enough for our hero. He wants Mujin, nothing more, nothing less. Meanwhile, the newly revived world president starts mourning Han's death, which sort of repulses P. After all, she thought he was going to be more concerned about their unborn baby than Generation X. At the same time, the entire library is literally split in half when Mori and Dean come face to face. Mori tells Dean to stand aside because this is none of his business. But Dean has made it his business, especially now that Mori has killed one of his Generation X teammates. Back to Mujin, Mandoc tells him to snap out of it because they need to go. Meanwhile, on the moon, Beck is inside his facility as he keeps an eye on the slowly resurrecting body of Tathagata. He questions why the signs in the Book of Prophecy keep appearing. Back in the library, Mandoc tries to go for the hard sell once again, telling Mujin that he has no other choice but to team up with him if he wants to save himself and revive the dead Team Generation X members he just lost. Mujin finally agrees to a temporary alliance, as he takes Mandoc's hand and they find an exit out of the library. Mori's not letting them off the hook though. Our hero launches his Mori-Jin original kick of the Blue Dragon technique. In turn, Mandoc and Mujin join forces to combine their Kalios and Longinus abilities to strike Mori's allies, knowing that the Monkey King would be forced to save them instead. It works too, as Mori diverts his Blue Dragon kick's trajectory to destroy Mujin and Mandoc's technique and save his friends, which then allows the two villains to make their escape. Mujin can't help but throw shade at Mori one last time, telling him his compassion is basically the reason why he can't be human. Well, Mujin takes an L on this exchange, because Mori retorts by telling him he doesn't want to be a bastard like him anyway. And even though Mujin and Mandoc are able to escape, Mori gets in one more good hit on his arch-nemesis when he launches Yoi and slices off Mujin's right leg with it. Our hero gets the last word too, as he tells Mujin to remember that he'll always hunt him down, even if it means Mori has to go to the ends of hell to do it. He'll make Mujin wish he was never born in this world. Mori's hunt is fully postponed, however, when Mori Jung suddenly lunges at him. Jung runs his mouth about tussling with our hero, and this clone is really proud of the fact that he has custody of Gyeongdaewon right now. As Jung puts it, Gyeongdaewon has the ability to fill an entire area with fine mist, which you can then use to sense your targets. So Jung offers Mori to fight him and reclaim Gyeongdaewon so that our hero can use it to track down Mujin. On a side note, we get a brief glimpse of Daewoo and Mira's long-awaited reunion. Back in the library, Jung tells Mori to just take Gyeongdaewon from him. The Monkey King then gives his wayward clone a verbal beatdown when Mori reveals that Gyeongdaewon is already going back to its original owner, the true Monkey King Mori. So Jung gets all insecure and tries to take the magic cloud back by force. More of his hang-ups are exposed when Jung tells Mori that fighting him is the only way he can feel better about himself. Not too far away, P notices that Mujin still hasn't fully recovered from his wounds. On the bright side, he does address this whole baby deal for the first time, as he asks P what they should name it. Of course, Mujin's obsession with Generation X bubbles up to the surface, so he suggests naming their kid X. Because it sounds like X. P just half-heartedly agrees, because she knows that the bun in her oven is more likely going to be a child with a disability instead of a powerful mutant. Their conversation is cut short, however, when enemy forces arrive and shoot Mujin a couple of times. The next thing the duo knows, they're surrounded by a platoon of soldiers who accuse Mujin of treason. His sentence? Summary execution. At the same time, Mandoc nurses his own wounds and gets frustrated when he notices his severed arm is taking longer than usual to regenerate. What's more interesting, though, is when he realizes that Mujin's resurrection didn't just come from his own primeval borrowed power. See, Mandoc knows that it's impossible to revive someone by using only his ability called the creation of all things. So, Mandoc suspects two things. One, that Han did something to Mujin's body before she died, which completed the resurrection process. And two, that Mujin came back to life after P told him about their kid. And although he doesn't know the answer to this just yet, Manhwa is sure of one thing, that Tathagata's resurrection into the supreme god Maitreya has already begun. Somewhere else, Mujin recognizes the commanding officer of the soldiers who have surrounded them. It's Desinovich, the captain of the world government's first airborne squad. Denisovich then reveals the mastermind behind this whole coup against Mujin, which we already knew was Jonathan. See, Jonathan is doing all of this for revenge. That's because this guy happens to be the brother of Jonas Jonas, the same politician whom Mujin assassinated some time ago. Now, Jonathan's plan isn't just to kill Mujin, it's to make sure that none of his legacy remains. So much so that we soon learn that Jonathan is actually backing Yopio's campaign to become the new world president, while he made sure to out Mujin's underhanded dealings in order to turn him into public enemy number one. Mujin remains defiant, however, and tells Jonathan he should have killed each and every one of his council members back when he had the chance. Jonathan cuts him off and simply orders the 1st Airborne Squad to open fire on Mujin. Mujin tries to use his powers on the soldiers, but he's too weak right now to do any real damage to them. Fortunately for him, Dean arrives just in time to protect Mujin and P. However, he also came here with bad news, that Ha has succumbed to his wounds, meaning that there are only 3 remaining Generation X members in active duty right now. Jonathan spots Dean and tells his men to gather the corpses of any dead Generation X members they can find so that they can use them for research. Dean tells his boss about Generation X's power transfer ability, something that Deuce and Kim learned when they tried to assassinate him half a year ago. As Dean puts it, Generation X's powers don't really disappear. Dean then declares his allegiance to Mujin, telling the man that he wants to see the future world president has envisioned for so long. In reply, Mujin tells Dean that he won't be disappointed. Somewhere else, Dewi and Mira have a face-off. Dewi reveals that he has a hunch that explains Mira's heel turn. The long and short of it is that Dewi believes R made it so that Mira would naturally try to absorb the Jade Emperor's body. So this whole meeting between them right now has been the plan all along. Dewi really doesn't want to fight his ex, but he's forced to defend himself when Mira starts the clash. Dewi bobs and weaves through her sword strikes. Mira almost gets him by sneaking in a couple of gigantic blades through Dewi's back, but the Jade Emperor uses his sage's robe to protect himself. The two former lovers then square up again, as Dewi tells Mira the stakes of this duel. Whoever wins gets to take home the other's body and mind, plus the robe of the sage and the blade of Tathagata. But our boy doesn't care about any of that. He just wants to get this fight over with so that the two of them can go on a date. Mira thinks he's lame, and the two get into another epic clash once more. Somewhere else, we find out that Mori has easily knocked Jung on his butt. He tells his clone to just give up because he'll gain full control of Gyeongdaewon soon enough. But Jung remains obstinate, as he summons the Magic Cloud's thunderbolts to strike our hero. Mori transforms into Jin Mori mode to block the thunderbolts and soccer kick Jung right in the face. From there, Mori uses Gyeongdaewon to give Jung a taste of his own medicine and strike him with thunderbolts too. Jung takes the full brunt of the attack, but then something curious happens. Mori notices that Jung is able to concentrate the power of the thunderbolt in his feet, as the clone channels a technique called Mori Jung Original Thunder Dragon Kick. Jung then reveals that he's been practicing this ability for so long, mainly out of desperation. He and Mori then simultaneously unleash a recoilless basic kick directed at each other. Mori's just a beat faster, however, and he's able to land his recoilless kick on Jung's head, telling the clone that he's not the only one who's desperate here. Another quick flashback reveals Jung's whole training montage when he tried mastering how to channel Gyeongdaewon's thunderbolts in his body. It was basically just trial and error for Jung until he developed an iron will that was able to withstand the Magic Cloud's lightning bolts. In the present, Mori has just knocked the wind out of Jung after their previous clash. Our hero orders Gyeongdaewon to return to him and find Mujin. On the other hand, Jung proves that he really has an iron will when he recovers from Mori's recoilless kick to try and sneak a strike behind our hero. Somewhere else, Dean manages to regenerate Mujin's severed leg with a shoddy temporary cybernetic replacement. He then tells Mujin to stay as far away from Gyeongdaewon's mist as possible, knowing that Mori's still hunting him down. So Manhwa tells him to get a move on because the holy place is just up ahead. Meanwhile, Jonathan receives a status report from his underlings. They tell him that they've shot Mujin and P a few times and a couple of Generation X members are dead. As for their own forces, they've incurred about 300,000 casualties. Jonathan tells his men to just throw bodies at their enemies, however, because this dude really has got an axe to grind with Mujin. Our story then goes to another flashback, and it's more of Jung being an insecure little clone. In the present, Mori pretty much tells Jung to just walk away because there's no chance he's going to beat him. In reply, Jung summons the 7th owner of the skyscraper to attack our hero. Mori remembers intel about this from Sujin, and the Monkey King easily activates his dragon armor suit speed mode to zip around the library's ruins and evade the 7th owner's attacks. And at this point, Mori has had enough of these dumb side quests, so he whips out Yui and crushes the seventh owner with it. But then, the plot's momentum is interrupted by another flashback. It's another heaping helping dose of Jung's insecurities, as he realizes he's just a fake copy of the original Monkey King. In the present, Jung has a tantrum, while the seventh owner transforms into its final form. Mori's just about ready to defend himself from this sentient blob when Jung suddenly cancels the seventh owner's summoning. Another flashback sees Jung refusing first aid from Mandoc, thinking that his scars make him stand out from the original Jin Mori. Back in the present, Jung tells Mori that he didn't want to fight him with proxies like the seventh owner. He wants to beat the Monkey King himself. Well, Mori really doesn't care about Jung's feelings, so he tells the clone to summon any friend he wants so he can put them in their place. Jung is actually pleased that Mori's finally getting into a scrappy mood now. Hell, Mori even tells his clone that they could have been friends if things had turned out differently. Regardless, the two warriors finally square up, and no fancy tricks this time. These two are going at it with good old-fashioned renewal taekwondo. Mori and Jung try to kick each other's face in, and the boys honestly start enjoying the whole experience, proving that nothing brings people closer together than a fistfight. Even better, Jung finally stops being all insecure and jealous about being a clone while in the middle of this scuffle, because in the heat of battle, all that matters is you show up and swing. As Jung puts it himself, he's here, so deal with it. We then head to another flashback where we see a random South Korean boy harassing a random nerd on the street when Mandoc, who's still bound to a wheelchair at this point, intervenes and white knights the heck out of the situation. The boy, being the meathead that he is, of course tries to bring the beat down on Mandoc, but this crippled boy is smart. He pulls out his phone and immediately snitches them to the local defenders of the public office. So the boy backs off, but not before hurling a stone in the back of Mandoc's head. He then calls Mujin, who's not too pleased that Mandoc has his number. When asked how he got it, let's just say that Mandoc has been pretty much stalking Mujin ever since they first met. More specifically, he pulled a few strings to get Mujin's personal information from the government using the selfie they took when they first met. And what can we say? If you got it, flaunt it. Mandoc doesn't feel bad about it, and even gives us some sound life advice when he tells Mujin that there are times when your greatest weakness can be your ultimate weapon. He uses himself as an example. People tell you all kinds of stuff when you're impaired because they feel sorry for you. It's all about making the most out of your abilities, or disabilities in Mandoc's case. But Mandoc overplays his hand when he starts lecturing Mujin about this. Mujin doesn't appreciate the lecture, so he sends the boy's wheelchair dashing through traffic. Mandoc doesn't get killed and the two dudes hang out a bit after that. This time, Mujin's the one who gets on the soapbox to tell Mandoc how stupid it was for him to butt in other people's business, like how he got between the golfer and the bully earlier. As Mujin puts it, the boy Mandoc saved is just going to end up getting more harassed because of what Mandoc did. Even more, that same boy probably hates Mandoc now because of his whole Captain Justice routine. In the end, Mujin gets to the point and tells Mandoc to just mind his own business from here on out. He leaves, and Mandoc confesses he's a big fan of Mujin's. That night, Mandoc is inside a library when Mujin suddenly appears. The two dudes hang out again, and Mujin learns that Mandoc is studying a whole lot of scientific fields, from theoretical physics to astronomy to biotechnology. You know, for fun. Mujin is weirded out by this though, knowing that Mandoc's an overly religious kid. But the boy makes it clear that science and religion don't always have to be mutually exclusive. As Mandoc says, science is awesome because it allows you to discover the universe's hidden, unchanging rules. Plus, not all scientists are atheists. Whoever says that needs to go to school. In any case, Mandoc even goes so far as to tell Mujin an anecdote about how astronauts become religious after going to space, since seeing the world from the atmosphere makes people experience the existence of God. But more importantly, Mandoc reveals that he's studying all these things to find out if someone had a reason for bringing a cripple like him into this filthy, cruel world. It comforts Mandoc. He then asks Mujin what he wants to be. He replies by telling Mandoc a very Pokemon answer. Mujin just wants to be the very best. Mandoc then goes on another lecture, telling Mujin that the important thing in life isn't how fast you go, but where you go. As he puts it, ideas like invincibility or being the best at something is like a mirage. They're just impossible fantasies. When Mujin asks him what direction he should go towards, Mandoc has another clever answer, that you should strive to beat yourself. As he puts it, it's not about competing with others or being the best physically. Anyone who overcomes their own limits deserves respect. Mandoc ends his pep talk, and Mujin is quietly convinced. The flashback takes a dark turn, however, when it's revealed that Mandoc is what people in the world of God of High School call canned goods. They're basically kids who are adopted by rich benefactors to be raised and bred as organ donors. Even darker is when we learn that Mandoc's sister, Mansuk, isn't her biological sibling. Mansuk happens to be the recipient of Mandoc's harvested organs. Returning to the flashback, Mansuk arrives to fetch Mandoc. She comes face to face with Mujin, who flicks her on the forehead as payback for slapping him before. Mujin says they're even now, but Mansuk is one salty organ recipient. She tells Mujin to go F himself before slapping him in the face again. In the present, Mujin wakes up to learn that they've arrived at the holy place. The world president takes off his pendant and places it on the ground, which then more or less activates the entire area. And from there, Mandoc invites him to get started with what they're about to do. There's no payoff just yet, however, because God of High School goes on another flashback sequence. On the bright side, this one's far from being the usual exposition dump we get, because it's here we learn that Mandoc was actually adopted by Mansuk's family, who actually used to be high-ranking members of the original Nox cult. More than that, Mansuk was believed to be this nutty cult's messiah figure, which explains why Nox went so far as to buy a canned good like Mandoc. See, Mansuk was a rich, spoiled, sickly brat. Everyone thought she wouldn't live past the age of 12. But thanks to Mandoc's organ donations, she eventually lived long enough to become a teenager and be installed as Nox's own saint. The cult schemes go deeper than that too, because Mansuk, being Nox's saint, was also assigned to be the vessel for the supreme god Maitreya. The problem was, it eventually came to a point when Nox's higher-ups realized that Mandoc might actually be the prophet that they'd been waiting for. We don't get any answers here, because our story finally gets back to Jung and Mori's scuffle. The action-packed clash sees these two warriors trading blows for a bit, but Mori ultimately gets the upper hand when he lands a cracking knee to Jung's face before sweeping him with a low kick. And from there, our hero pretty much goes to town on the clone. Mori locks Jung in this weird crucifix hold style move and beats him with a technique called melee smash. Jung is only able to escape when he summons one of Gyeongdaewon's thunderbolts. He then spots an opening in Mori's defense, but this all amounts to nothing when the original Monkey King slips into Jung's defenses and uses recoilless basic to pepper him with strikes. Jung gets the wind knocked out of him, but in no way is Mori finished. He cracks him in the chin with a recoilless sidekick. And while our hero just has his way with the clone, as he drives him into the ground with a destructive elbow to the body called Re Taekwondo Ice Pick before doing some classic ground and pound on him with Samsu jab. Still, there's no giving up in Jung. He stands up after the barrage only to get cracked with Mori's Re Taekwondo Orang technique. And at this point, Jung realizes he really has no chance to take out someone like Mori. So the clone changes his agenda from defeating the original Monkey King to just landing a single clean strike on him. As he puts it, everything about his existence might be fake, but the desire to land one on Mori's smug face is all Jung's decision. The two warriors get into another heated clash. Jung is still unable to land a single blow on Mori, but at least he makes progress when he finds an opening and goes for a takedown attempt in the middle of their scuffle. Too bad though, because Mori's game has layers. Jung loses his grip on our hero when he hits the clone with a 12-6 elbow and follows it up with another knee to Jung's chin. Jung gets rocked so hard that he admits fighting Mori is like fighting a literal fortress. There's just no way he can get through. But Jung is not the kind of clone to just bow out of a challenge. So he ups the ante by hitting himself with Gyeongdaewon's Thunderbolt to give himself a power boost. Mori notices this and knows how dangerous it is, but Jung doesn't care. He already made it clear that his one goal in life is to hit Mori just one time, even if it crushes Jung to a pulp in the process. So, now jacked up with Gyeongdaewon's Thunderbolt, Jung lunges at Mori, and the power boost actually works, as Jung finds himself nearly on even footing with the original Monkey King during their clash. But as Mori puts it, experience is the best teacher when it comes to fight IQ. They trade blows once again, all the while Jung has another flashback of when Mandoc told him he was the only successful test subject out of all the other Mori clones he made. Jung thankfully keeps his head in the game instead of going all in on this flashback, as the memory is supplanted by his desire to land a clean hit on his opponent. Too late though, because Mori once again overwhelms Jung, which makes the clone realize that maybe he'll never get to achieve his humble dream. Still, Jung digs deep to break away from the clash so that he and Mori can reset. The two warriors get into their respective stances only for Mori to notice that Jung has passed out while standing. And it's not like Jung did absolutely nothing in the preceding fight. For one, the intensity of their duel has managed to gas out Mori, which inevitably makes him revert to his Mori-Dan form, aka his quote-unquote weak form. For another, their fight rocked the ruined library so hard that debris from its ceiling has started to fall, threatening to crush the both of them. And, given Mori's too weak to do anything about this right now, our hero is under threat of getting crushed under the library's rubble. But then, Jung suddenly wakes up and saves both of them by summoning Yoi and the seventh owner of the skyscraper to shield them from the debris. And Jung might be a mopey emo version of the original Mori, but this clone knows how to graciously take a loss. He does this by handing over the seventh owner to our hero. In turn, Mori realizes that Jung really did pull out all the stops during their scuffle. Namely, Jung didn't just boost himself up with Gyeongdaewon's thunderbolts, he actually even went so far as to apply Jumbo and Chim on himself. Mori knows that this is the only reason Jung was able to withstand his strikes. But our hero is also well aware of Jaebong Chim's rebound, which Jung is now currently feeling. Jung then tells Mori that he did everything he could to land a clean strike on him in order to prove he's a real person. Mori replies by telling him that Jung's real enough, what with his own battle scars and all that. Jung thinks Mori is making fun of him, but our hero reassures the clone that he's sincere. In any case, Mori walks away from the fight, and Jung is left alone to deal with his defeat. On the bright side, Mori now has full ownership of both Gyeongdaewon and the 7th owner, bringing him closer to his former glory. But like a divorced deadbeat dad who suddenly gained custody of the kids, the 7th owner and Gyeongdaewon won't listen to Mori's commands when he tries to order them. Surprisingly enough, God of High School doesn't introduce an entire subplot about our hero regaining full control of these two artifacts. Instead, Mori just focuses up and brings the 7th owner and Gyeongdaewon to heal. Mori first tries to summon a thunderbolt, but he ends up getting electrocuted by his magic cloud. It's here that our hero realizes that the 7th owner and Gyeongdaewon are acting up because he abandoned them in the past. But the Monkey King is determined to put these weapons in their place. So Mori channels his energy and transforms into his full Jin Mori form and summons one of Gyeongdaewon's thunderbolts yet again. It works this time, as Gyeongdaewon envelops all of the city in a giant electrified swirl. World government agents start to panic when they get a reading on this, but Ilpyo reassures him that it's just Mori doing his thing. In fact, everyone from Sujin to Mandok can sense what's going on in the skies above the city. Mandok tells Mujin to calm down when he starts to get worried, telling the world president the big bad Monkey King's power can't reach him inside the holy place. Meanwhile, Daewoo and Mira continue to have their spat, and the Jade Emperor gets hyped when he senses Mori's powers returning to near the same level as it was back in Ragnarok. Back to Mori, our hero tells Gyeongdaewon to track down Mujin. The magic cloud does its thing and almost instantly pings the man's location. However, Mori stops in his tracks when he senses Tathagata in the holy place. Our hero gets a PTSD flashback from the carnage that this long-dead god once caused, prompting Mori to revert to his Mori-Dan form. In any case, Mori rushes towards the holy place as he desperately tries to stop Mujin from reviving the dead god. On the moon, Beck and his crew have just completed setting up a dimension converter. Beck goes on a mercifully quick exposition about the prophecy, which states that the rapture is going to happen at the same time as a solar eclipse. Beck reveals that Tathagata's sudden revival has been brought on by a massive amount of energy being channeled through his corpse, but Beck has made moves to divert this energy to the cane of the sage. It's a good tactic for a couple of reasons. One, combining the energy he gathers in the cane of the sage and fusing it with the dimension converter might allow him to bring Uma back to their world. For another, siphoning off this energy slows down Tathagata's revival. Beck says he'll do everything he can to stop Tathagata's resurrection from his moonbase, but the dead god continues to regenerate. Back in the holy place, Mandok tells his group that the promised time has come. In turn, the remaining members of Generation X activate their resonance ability, which extends to all the other Generation X babies out there in the world. Meanwhile, Mandok declares that now is the time for the revival of their supreme god, Maitreya. In a slightly disappointing turn of events, we get caught up with Xiao Chen's duel with O only to find out that the smoking hot bishop has already won. O knows he's about to shuffle off the mortal coil, so he asks one thing of Xiao Chen, for her to spare Chang Shik's baby dragons. Credit where credit is due, because Xiao Chen hasn't gotten soft even after all these years. Instead of honoring O's request blindly, she asks him why she should do what he asks. O tells her that they're both war criminals, and the long and short of it is that Xiao Chen still needs to pay for her past crimes, which she can do by sparing these cute dragon babies. O then says his final words where he basically apologizes for screwing over our heroes in the aftermath of Ragnarok. O then tells himself that he had no regrets siding with Mujin and the world government. Although, in a forced attempt to create romantic tension, Mujin Park reveals that O has had feelings for P this whole time. Sure. In any case, O's last wish is for P to just be happy. O soon expires, and we almost find out his real name, but Mujin Park blurted it out for some reason, so all we know is that O's real first name is Helmet. Meanwhile, Sujin has just subdued several of Chang Shik's offspring and gets ready to kick their heads in. But Sujin suddenly has a change of heart when one of the dragon kids starts screaming for their mom. This reminds Sujin of her own childhood, so she hesitates. Bad move, because the cheeky dragon kid has just used this opening to try and ambush Sujin. The ITF Taekwondo master easily gives the kid a taste of her boot, but more of its siblings suddenly gang up on her. Sujin activates her Pandora powers, but she pulls back when she notices that the dragon kids are planning to go for a kamikaze attack. Sujin goes for a last-ditch effort to freeze her opponents with her Hope technique, but she's too late. A trio of dragon kids drive their claws into her abdomen, and Sujin accepts defeat. Now Sujin knows how to take a loss, so she doesn't get all bitter about it. Instead, she gives the Dragon Kids a pep talk, telling them they'll meet some really good people out there if they just go on eating what they want and seeing the things they want to see. The Dragon Kids are moved by her words, so they cancel their kamikaze attack and let go of Sujin. In turn, Sujin gets ready to bring the beatdown on these kids once more, but she passes out from exhaustion. She soon wakes up to discover that the Dragon Kids have now imprinted on her. Simply put, she's their mom now. Now, Dragon Mommy might not seem like a cool title, but as the narration states, Sujin would eventually become the new Dragon Lord after O. Meanwhile, Xiaochen can feel the life seeping out of her, so she makes a promise to reunite with Okwang once she's finished her job protecting Daewee to the very end. God of High School's next chapter starts with a quick flashback to the conclusion of Ragnarok, where the remaining gods like Odin and Satan have made an oath to not mess with the human world anymore. In the present, the resonance continues, while an explosion occurs in the middle of the city as part of the ritual to revive the Supreme God. However, the group notices that they don't have enough energy to complete the ritual, so Mujin turns to Mandok. He asks the crazy bishop to lend him his pendant so that they can use the juice stored from the energy stones with it. But Mandok's no dummy. He dangles the pendant in front of Mujin but doesn't give it to him because he wants to know what the world president is going to do with Maitreya, whether he plans on actually bringing the Supreme God back to life or trapping him. Mujin tells the truth and says he's going to trap Maitreya for humanity's sake, and when Mandok asks why, especially considering that humanity has basically turned its back on Mujin, the world president disagrees. As he puts it, humanity never betrayed him. But more importantly, Mujin goes on a quick exposition about Generation X. We've all heard it before, about how this generation of mutants will soon replace humanity. The only new bit of information we get here is that Mujin believes that Homo sapiens, or humanity as it is right now, are more or less just leftovers from a bunch of pathetic lower gods, both himself and Mandok included. All of a sudden, P feels her stomach hurt, while Mandok goes on a rant about how Mujin is basically screwing over his sister, Mansuk, even after she gave her life for him. But Mujin makes it clear that Mandok was the one who really killed Mansuk. Their argument is cut short when a bunch of soldiers burst into the holy place and open fire. Mujin and Mandok use their respective powers to protect themselves, while Mandok urges Mujin to just kill these soldiers. After all, they're humans, and humans, as Mujin just said, are just leftovers. But Mujin corrects his old friend once again. He goes on another monologue, this time about how humanity has been able to catch up to Mandok's power levels in just 17 years. Mujin's speech just ultimately devolves into more of his humanity first shtick, as he tells Mandok that humanity will most likely completely surpass Mandok's power levels in another 17 years. Mujin gets all hyped and starts laughing about the possibility. Somewhere else, Mori continues to rush towards Mujin's location, but our boy is lost. He gives Ilpio a call, who tells him the last known coordinates of the world president. But the biggest development here is when we find out that Ilpio has been elected as the second ever president of the world just now. While this is all happening, Odin and Satan are just chilling in the realm of the gods. Odin gets extra excited and says that all those oaths and bullshit they made with our heroes at the end of Ragnarok won't matter once Maitreya is revived. As a matter of fact, Odin reveals that he only made those deals with humanity knowing that this whole Supreme God resurrection prophecy would ultimately render them null. And, well, let's just say Odin gets a massive chub just thinking about the chaos and destruction he can cause once Maitreya comes back. As for Satan, this weird devil is just excited to have his rematch with Mori. Back to Mori, our hero gets another PTSD flashback when he remembers how he had to literally eat his beloved partner to escape the god's clutches when he was still the Monkey King. Mori starts to question whether he and his pals would stand a chance against a fully revived Maitreya. So our hero thought about linking up with Daewee first before heading to the holy place. However, he ended up changing his mind and trusts Daewee in his own battle. As Mori says, he's sure Daewee would be able to bring back Mira soon enough. Meanwhile, Daewee and Mira's scuffle continues to escalate, as Daewee hurls a train right at his ex. Mira makes easy work of the projectile by carving it in half with the blade of Tathagata though. Mori's hunt for Mujin continues and only stops when the underground layer's layout shifts and changes right before his very eyes. Not too far away, Daewee and Mira continue to duke it out. The ex-lovers find themselves on even footing, as they trade blow after blow. Mira eventually finds an opening and attempts to crush Daewee with an entire section of the tunnel they're in, but the Jade Emperor counters it by hurling another subway train that hits Mira square in the face. Daewee sends in another train to pin down Mira, but all this does is create a sinkhole in the middle of New Korea's metropolitan area, and from there, Mira and Daewee's fight goes above ground. Down below, Mansuk starts to get worried about Sujin and the destruction the Witch of the West and the Jade Emperor are causing with their scuffle. He spots Mira's adopted boy and considers taking him hostage, but then a tremor from Daewee and Mira's fight shakes the underground cavern they're in, which prompts Mansuk to be an adult and shield the boy from the falling debris. Surprisingly enough, the kid knows that Mansuck is working with AnimeRox's enemies. Instead of snitching him, though, the kid asks for Mansuck's help. As he puts it, Mira and everyone in the immediate vicinity are going to die if they don't do something about her. Meanwhile, Mira grazes Daewoo in the neck with her blade. Daewoo counters with his own strike, and the duel escalates when Mira launches a few energy blades toward Daewoo. Suffice it to say, Soul's going to need some major renovations after this duel is done. In the meantime, Mira and Daewoo work their way up to the top of the gigantic Yoi fragment in the middle of the city. Mira summons her borrowed power, Lu Bu, and Daewoo meets it by summoning Heite. The two borrowed powers clash. Neither of them hits Mira or Daewoo, and instead just wrecks more of the city. So Mira follows up with her strong force, Big Bang technique, which makes Daewoo wonder if she's trying to send the Asian continent back to the Stone Age. To counter her latest attack, Daewoo declares he has no choice but to shut down the entire universe for a second. Down below the city, Sujin and Xiaochen try to find an escape route, but the shifting layout of the place prevents them from doing so. Sujin asks Xiaochen if they can just brute force their way out of this place, but Xiaochen advises against it due to the fact that they don't know what might happen if the holy place gets wrecked in the process. So Xiaochen tells Sujin to just follow her lead. They don't have much time either, because she knows that the Jade Emperor is going to let himself die if he can't win over Mira. Sujin agrees, and we get a short flashback from when Daewoo told Sujin that he really doesn't care about committing genocide as long as he can save Mira. In the present, Sujin can sense that Daewoo really doesn't care about the civilian casualties above ground, given how he's going at Mira full force. Meanwhile, we also get a brief glimpse of Q having a duel with Sim Bongsa. On the other hand, Sujin proposes to split up with Xiaochen. Before they do so, however, Xiaochen tells Sujin that there's something she needs her to do. We don't get any payoff just yet, because the story shifts to Jonathan and his goons, who are currently panicking about the comet that Mira summoned. Jonathan remains calm though, and goes for the classic bureaucrat tactic of releasing a fake news announcement that the comet is just a new Korean weapon test. Back to the duel, Daewoo more or less admits that he's so tired of this no-killing crap just as he uses his powers to dispel Mira's Big Bang ability with his own gravity times 100 technique. Daewoo inadvertently saves the Asian continent from returning to the Stone Age. Even better, their recent clash forces Mira to reset, which allows Daewoo to find an opening and use his attraction ability to send Mira close to him and his devastating right overhand. He then goes for his repulsive force ability to hurl Mira some distance away before hitting her with attraction and another punch to the face. This whole boomerang-style combo goes on for a few times. Somewhere else, the boy tells Mansuck that Mandoc is a scumbag of the highest order. Specifically, Mandoc deceived everyone in AnimeRox that they'd survive this whole war if they do what he tells them, but the kid knows better. A short flashback reveals that it was Mandoc who orchestrated things so that the kid would act as if he was Mira's own son. In the present, the child tells Mansuck that he initially had no problems tricking Mira, but he's now realized that Mandoc and AnimeRox are the bad guys of this story. On the bright side, the kid does say that Mira has a faint idea that Mandoc can't be trusted, but we also get a hint that Mira's gotten so brainwashed that her entire perception of things differ from reality, as exhibited when she sees Okwang when she looks at Daewoo during their duel. Or to put it simply, Mandoc pulled the strings so that Mira now has a case of cognitive dissonance. Back to the fight. Daewoo continues using his effective attraction, repulsive force, punch to the face combo until Mira finally gets hip to the scheme and mounts a counterattack with her blade. Daewoo is forced to go on the defensive to deflect the sword, while Mansuck has taken it upon himself to act as the kid's bodyguard down below. The two former lovers' clash reaches a point where another explosion threatens to engulf the middle of New Korea, which then prompts Mira to shield her AnimeRox comrades while dispelling the blast. The dust settles a moment later, and Daewoo witnesses the AnimeRox flunkies basically getting on their knees to worship the Witch of the West. Meanwhile, Mira's mind continues to fracture, as she remembers her vow to protect everyone she loves. The problem is, it's clear that she still can't remember Daewoo. On the other hand, Daewoo realizes that AnimeRox has turned into Mira's new family after all these years. After all, she has spent more time with these weirdos than she has with either Daewoo or Mori in the past. In the end, Daewoo gets frustrated and decides to unleash his full power, all the while telling Mira that it's about time they just put an end to this damn fight. Mira has another flashback of the times other people told her how to become stronger. The main takeaway here is that it's revealed R told her that the first condition to gain unstoppable power is to erase yourself, which partly explains why Mira's become an amnesiac. In the present, another destructive clash between Mira and Daewoo erupts once more. They get into it at close range, and Daewoo recalls all the training he did specifically for this fight. Mira soon finds an opening and drives her blade through Daewoo's left shoulder. But in a way, Daewoo wanted this to happen. He tells her that he used to think that their duel would all boil down to physical strength, and now he just wants to end this dust-up. So Daewoo grabs Mira's sword to keep her in place. He unleashes his trademark Kyokushin Karate, Fist of the Black Turtle technique, and proceeds to drive his fist into Mira's gut. Mira's not about to be caught by the same technique Daewoo used on her years ago, though. So she counters with Wolfgang swordsmanship step technique, allowing Mira to roll her way out of Daewoo's fist. Mira then tells Daewoo that, like him, she didn't skip a single day of training either. And from there, Mira goes for Wolfgang swordsmanship, weaponless technique, and strikes Daewoo in the back with her bare hand. The robe of the sage protects him from any serious damage, but Daewoo's rocked. The moment he takes to recover is also the same moment that Mira grabs her blade and smacks Daewoo with it. Daewoo falls to the ground, but Mira knows that he hesitated with his Fist of the Black Turtle technique at the last second. She asks him why he did this, and Daewoo tells her about his second biggest regret in life, that he focused too much on the basics, which ultimately made him drop his guard. Daewoo concedes defeat, but he prepares to launch one final attack in hopes of getting back his old flame. Well, it's not really another martial arts technique or borrowed power, because Daewoo's gambit is raising his thumb in front of Mira and simply asking her to join him. The gesture makes Mira remember more of her past, but she still has no idea who Daewoo is. So she asks him about his identity, and Daewoo proves he's one smooth emperor when he tells her that he's someone who likes her. Mira lashes out, and their conversation is cut short when Xiaochen appears out of nowhere and greets the Witch of the West with a solid Kyokushin karate sidekick to the face. Xiaochen then goes to town on Mira, barraging her with Kyokushin karate hook kicks, rapid punches, and White Tiger full contact strikes. Daewoo tries to tell Xiaochen to stop, but she tells him to shut his mouth because she's done taking orders from him. Right now, Xiaochen just wants to quote-unquote beat the snot out of Mira. Mira sneaks in a quick horizontal slice with her blade, which hits Xiaochen clean. Curiously, Xiaochen's wounds instantly get magically sewn up right after. On the sidelines, Daewoo summons Heitei to help him stop Xiaochen and Mira's fight, knowing full well that Xiaochen might die in the process. He attempts to use his natural force inertia ability to intervene, but Daewoo learns that Xiaochen has sealed off his powers from her. And with that, the Nox Bishop and the Witch of the West get into another clash. We then get the payoff from the favor that Xiaochen asked Sujin earlier. It turns out that she asked Sujin to return her borrowed power for the sole purpose of fighting Mira. This all stems from Xiaochen's vow to protect the Jade Emperor, especially after her failure to save Okwang in the past. In the present, Xiaochen has just unleashed her borrowed power. We then find out that Xiaochen's unleashed borrowed power is derived from Jewish mysticism, also known as Kabbalah. In any case, Xiaochen first uses a technique called Kabbalah Merkava, which traps Daewoo in a luminous mystical case. She then goes for Kabbalah Sefer Jetsra to seemingly subdue the Jade Emperor with glowing vines. Right after that, Xiaochen uses a technique called Kabbalah Ensof, which launches a barrage of energy beams towards Mira. Mira blocks him with her bare hands and tells Xiaochen to piss off. But this hot bishop is going nowhere. Xiaochen lunges at Mira again, but she just ends up taking a boot to the face. Mira then turns towards Daewoo and tries to slice him up. Xiaochen's Kabbalah Merkava case easily protects Daewoo from the attack, and the bishop reveals that her borrowed power is actually meant for protecting the Jade Emperor. A quick exposition reveals that the Kabbalah Merkava was specifically created for this, and it has the ability to completely seal off a certain area until the Jade Emperor is able to recover inside. Xiaochen reveals that nothing or no one can get in or out of her Kabbalah Merkava until its target, in this case Daewoo, has fully healed from their wounds. So Mira has no choice but to tussle with Xiaochen. And although Xiaochen is well aware that she doesn't stand a chance against the Witch of the West, our girl gives it all she's got, as she transforms into her primeval borrowed power form to scrap with Mira. But it's super ineffective, as Mira easily slashes her and attempts to topple another section of New Korea along the way. Mira's actions threaten to take out scores upon scores of innocent civilians. In the meantime, Daewoo pleads with Xiaochen to stop duking it out with his ex. But Xiaochen has a point when she refuses Daewoo's order and instead makes him realize that Mira might just be too far gone to be redeemed. Xiaochen means to end Mira's threat right then and there. In fact, she even gets the upper hand when she subdues Mira and prepares to infect her with poison. But Xiaochen ultimately fails when Mira summons one of her swords and chops off her stinger. At the same time, Daewoo desperately tries to punch his way out of the Kabbalah Merkava. A short flashback then shows that the gods fashioned Xiaochen's primeval borrowed power after insects, which explains why our girl transforms into one when she unleashes its full extent in the present. But Mira's just too much of a problem. She summons her national treasure, the 108 Agonies, and the Blade of Tathagata to end Xiaochen's life. In the meantime, Daewoo is only 40% recovered from his wounds when Mira and Xiaochen have their final clash. A flash of bright light engulfs the area. The dust soon settles, and Daewoo sees that Xiaochen has lost her bout against Mira. Witnessing all this makes Daewoo rethink his choices. Meanwhile, Xiaochen's not too bummed about dying. After all, she tells herself that she was able to fulfill the last mission that Okwang gave her. Xiaochen shuffles off the mortal coil when Mira chops her insectoid head off. And at this point, Daewoo has fully lost control of his senses. Our guy doesn't even channel any weeboo techniques to deal with Mira. He just breaks out of the Kabbalah Merkava and gives his ex a cracking right straight to the face, followed by an uppercut to the body that seemingly knocks the wind out of her. Somewhere else, Mujin and Mandak are busy taking care of Jonathan's goons. But they found themselves in a pinch due to the sheer numbers of these soldiers. Back on the battlefield, Mansak realizes that Dewi has started applying his gravitational powers on himself to augment his attacks. A move that's super risky considering the toll it takes on the human body. But as Dewi himself puts it while in the middle of barraging his old flame, it never really mattered how this fight would turn out for him. So he just continues throwing devastating haymakers right in Mira's face, all the while reminiscing about the good times they had back when they were together. Dewi's assault only stops when he feels the blowback of applying his gravitational techniques on his own body. Dewi throws up, and Mira sees this as an opening to strike. But the Jade Emperor has had enough of his ex, so he counters it again and proceeds to pound her midsection with body shots. Dewi goes on another barrage culminating in his Kyokushin Karate, Dance of the White Tiger technique. Mira manages to sneak in a couple of backstabs on Dewi, while her Neo-Nox underlings jump in to join the fray. But Dewi has other ideas. He fends them all off with his Wave of the Blue Dragon ability, forcing another reset to their clash. Dewi sees that Mira is still standing, while her Neo-Nox underlings pray to her. Somewhere else, Mandak and Mujin continue to fend off Jonathan's goons. Here's the thing though, Mujin might have agreed to a temporary alliance with Mandak, but it doesn't mean he's above screwing his old rival over. This happens when Mujin gets cheeky and steals Mandak's Energy Stone pendant. Mandak is too late to get it back, as Mujin activates the Energy Stones to complete Tathagata's resurrection ritual. Above ground, the boy reveals to Mansak that she's actually planning on becoming the supreme god to save the Neo-Nox members under her protection, even in spite of the fact that she knows Mandak has been tricking her this whole time. In the middle of the battlefield, Mira goes for her ultimate move, launching her 108 agonies toward Dewi. However, Dewi just shoots through the barrage of swords and right in front of Mira's face in the blink of an eye. Even Mansak notices that Dewi has found a new use for the Robe of the Sage, as the Jade Emperor activates a technique called Robe of the Sage, Shao Chen's reform. This effectively turns the Jade Emperor's signature armor into a devastating weapon that gives him super speed, allowing him to destroy the 108 agonies and give Mira a solid beating. As Mansak puts it, this kind of technique is the one you use when you've given up on defense and decide to go all in on offense. And guess what? It's super effective, because Dewi's barrage ends with him subduing Mira by her right arm. Our guy's ready to chop it off with his bare hand as he asks Mira what would happen if he cuts it off. But then, at that exact moment, Mujin presses the button on Mandak's pendant to unleash the energy they need to resurrect the supreme god Maitreya. God of High School's next chapter begins with yet another flashback. This time, we become privy to a meeting between Sujin and Mansak where she expresses her distrust of Dewi. Mansak initially doesn't agree with his master, but Sujin goes on a mercifully quick exposition about Dewi's personality. You see, Sujin couldn't have put it any better when she says that Dewi is the type of person who's willing to give up his life for a friend. He's the kind of guy who may be a strong ally when you need backup, but he absolutely sucks as a leader. This stems from the idea that people like Dewi will always prioritize their inner circle over anything. And as a leader, you shouldn't simply just focus on your friends and family. You've got your entire constituents to deal with. But as Sujin says, people like Dewi have no interest in anyone outside their close friends and family. So Dewi basically propagates cronyism, which is chillingly similar to a lot of so-called leaders in the real world. In the end, Sujin warns Mansak to get away from people like Dewi if ever the time comes when he has to push someone from his inner circle out. That road only leads to death, and Dewi is a lunatic for treading it. We then move to another flashback, this time just moments before Dewi managed to subdue Mira by the arm. It's here we find out that the Jade Emperor has completely lost his composure. He's forgotten about his power, responsibility, and purpose at this point. All Dewi wants to do is end this duel. We already know what happens next. Dewi and Mira go at it until he's able to catch her by the right arm. All the while, Dewi hears voices in his head telling him to take up Mira so he can complete his ascension as the undisputed Jade Emperor. In the present, Dewi's just about ready to chop off Mira's arm when the boy suddenly jumps in to save her. The boy asks Dewi what the hell he's doing to Mira, but the conversation is cut short when an energy stone bursts out of the kid's right eye socket like a green crystalline tumor. As we explained from the last video, this boy is actually not Mira's biological son. Mira and Neo-Nox found this injured boy after the events of the Ragnarok War, making him just another random survivor who had the tragic misfortune of getting caught up in the drama of God of High School's bonkers main players. Back to the present, it's all but confirmed that the energy stone growing out of the kid's eye socket stems from the fact that Mujin just activated Mandak's pendant. Every Neo-Nox member in the kid's immediate vicinity suddenly convulses, and not a moment passes when Mira suffers from the same fate. All the Neo-Nox operatives in the area suddenly transform into grotesque monsters, and Mansak realizes that Mandak may have finally activated his energy stones. The surge of energy from these things are so great that even Beck is able to detect it from his moon base. So he gives Mori a call and gives our hero a situation report. This forces Mori to hurry up and find Mujin before everything's too late. Back at the holy place, Mandoc reveals that he repurposed Okwang's old energy stones by pretty much turning Mira into a battery that siphons off other people's life forces directly. Using all the energy Mira has gathered, Mandoc then plans on activating the holy place, which would then allow for Maitreya to come back to life. Mandoc goes on to say that the holy place is actually an amplifier that's capable of either reviving or killing the supreme god. And with the help of Generation X's abilities, both Mujin and Mandoc know that either resurrecting or killing Maitreya now is at arm's reach. Mujin then asks Mandoc what would happen to Mira once she finishes siphoning energy from other people, to which Mandoc reveals that she'll also have her life force sucked out of her and die like all the others. Outside, the poor kid starts to panic, as the energy stone in his eye socket just keeps on growing. Mira gets to her senses and attempts to comfort the boy, but this just ultimately triggers her transformation into an energy siphoning monster. Mira is suddenly covered in red tendrils, which then extend to anyone it can find in order to suck out their life force. Several innocent civilians almost get captured by these tendrils, but Dewi arrives just in time to fend them off and tell these random dudes to get the hell out of there. Dewi then turns to Mira, who is now completely transformed into a grotesque humanoid beast, and our man states the obvious. This is not the Mira he used to know. More importantly, Dewi's now sure that someone completely brainwashed his ex, and it's not Mandoc, it's actually Tathagata, who's currently using Mira as a pawn to help bring him back to life. Dewi's right too, because Mira has completely lost control of her mind and body at this point, as she wildly sends out her tendrils to capture anything and anyone they can get to. So Dewi springs into action and attempts to rescue Mansoc, but this reformed delinquent shows he's really turned over a new leaf when he tells Dewi to protect Mira's kid instead. Dewi heeds Mansoc's request and grabs the kid, even chopping off the energy stone growing from his eye socket in the process. Unfortunately, Dewi's too slow to dodge when Mira attacks them. The kid takes a fatal hit in the process of shielding Dewi, and the sight of seeing him getting literally stabbed in the back allows Mira to momentarily gain her senses. Meanwhile, Dewi asks the kid why he gave up his life for him. The boy then comes clean, apologizing to Dewi for playing a part in painting him as Mira's enemy. On top of that, the kid apologizes to Mira for pretending to be her and Dewi's actual son. You can't blame him though. After all, he's a war refugee who just wanted someone to love him. The kid says farewell to Mira before taking his last breath. For a split second, memories of Dewi wash over her, but Tathagata's influence is just too strong and our girl ends up turning into a monster again. Realizing that there's no other way to fix this, Dewi grabs the blade of Tathagata and summons the robe of the sage once more, which effectively transforms the Kyokushin karate master into the complete version of the Jade Emperor. We then get another flashback. This one's a bit of a retread, but if you didn't know it already, all we see here is the creation of the blade of Tathagata. As the story goes, Tathagata asked Hephaestus, the goddess of smithing, to craft him the ultimate sword. Hephaestus agreed to do it if Tathagata could provide her with 40,000 souls. Tathagata went above and beyond and instead got her 48,000 souls to fuse into the sword she's going to create. Long story short, Hephaestus ended up forging the blade of Tathagata. The flashback then ends when Tathagata was about to give his new fancy sword a test cut. In the present, Dewi and Mira get into another high-octane clash. They seem to be on even footing at first, but Dewi soon realizes a couple of problems. One, Mira's getting faster by the second, and two, the blade of Tathagata is rejecting him, which makes the legendary weapon even more difficult to wield. Dewi is forced to go on the defensive while he thinks of his next move. In the meantime, our man is forced to defend himself from Mira's powerful attacks. To make matters worse, Okwang's voice keeps on goading Dewi to just devour Mira so that he can finally become the complete Jade Emperor. Dewi continues to refuse, but things get worse for him and the rest of our heroes when everyone notices that the solar eclipse mentioned in the prophecy is about to be completed. Random citizens start to think that this might be the end of the world. Meanwhile, Dewi's almost gassed out from defending against Mira's barrage when an energy surge bursts through New Korea. At the same time, Dewi comes face to face with an apparition of R, who offers to help him wield the blade of Tathagata properly. But Dewi refuses this too. Somewhere else, Ahan helps the people of New Korea get as far away from the chaos as possible. Meanwhile, Dewi tells R's ghost that he doesn't need his help, because he's got more than enough of it now. In fact, Heite has just appeared to lick Dewi's wounds away while they speak. Somewhere else, the New World President, Ilpio, tells his subordinates to send 90% of their main forces to New Korea immediately. And soon enough, Dewi becomes aware that the rescue and evacuation operations throughout the city are proceeding without a hitch. R's ghost accepts Dewi's decision and leaves. And now that Dewi doesn't have to worry about protecting other people, he can just focus on the fight. His first priority is finding a way to wield the blade of Tathagata. Our man does this by treating the legendary weapon like an extension of his fist. More specifically, Daewoo comes up with the clever move of simultaneously channeling his gravitational powers in both hands. He charges his right hand with his natural force expansion technique and his left with compression. This allows Daewoo to finally wield the blade of Tathagata with relative ease. But the crescendo of this move comes when we find out that Daewoo is basically planning on activating these two abilities along with the blade of Tathagata to create a powerful explosion that would hopefully be enough to take out Mira. Meanwhile, Mira summons a trident as Daewoo prepares to clash with her again. Daewoo thinks that the worst thing that could happen here is that he might lose the sage's wisdom in case his gambit fails. There's no time to ponder about the possibilities, as Daewoo and Mira charge at each other, the points of their respective weapons meeting each other right in the middle. From a distance, Mansa can tell that Mira has the upper hand, but the tide of battle suddenly changes when Daewoo comes up with another brilliant move. In the middle of their clash, Daewoo summons Heiti to give him an extra boost. It's just enough to allow the blade of Tathagata to break through Mira's defenses and slice her up. Daewoo's move culminates in him driving the blade of Tathagata through Mira's shoulder. However, our hero's right arm has been shattered in the process. No worries though, because Daewoo still has his left. And just to make sure his ex doesn't get froggy again, Daewoo activates his fist, level 2 ability to drive the blade of Tathagata deeper into Mira's shoulder. The technique is so powerful that it creates a surge of sharp energy to burst through Mira's shoulder and right into the giant Yoi pillar behind them. A huge section of Yoi is carved in the process and falls right on top of Mira. Not too far away, even Mansa can't believe Daewoo just took the W in this duel. Back on the moon, Beck is well aware that all the energy that Mira has gathered up to this point will soon be sent to Tathagata, which will then speed up the scumbag deity's resurrection. Because of this, Beck concludes Daewoo now has only one choice, to kill Mira as soon as possible. Back in New Korea, Daewoo's ultimate move proves to be super effective, as it destroys Mira's monster form and allows her to become human again, and one that looks like Nier Automata's A2 at that. With her senses back, Mira grabs the edge of Daewoo's blade and points it to her neck. Meanwhile, Daewoo recalls Okwang's lessons from back when they had their regular afternoon Jiangji games, that a king should never be attached to anyone. And in spite of Okwang's severe flaws, he had a point when he told Daewoo that a true king's virtues are boldness and the willingness to sacrifice the few for the sake of the many. In the present, Mira's monstrous Neo-Nox operatives sense that she's in trouble, so they begin to gather around Daewoo. At the same time, Tathagata's soul continues to get greedy and demand more power for his resurrection. Mira then begs Daewoo to kill her to prevent any more chaos. Even Mansuk and Beck agree with this. But Daewoo remains defiant to the end. He doesn't kill Mira and instead takes out his frustration on the random Neo-Nox monsters around them. Because as Daewoo puts it, what the hell is even the point of becoming a king if you lose the things you care about in the process? Okwang's spirit asks him if this means Daewoo's turning his back on humanity. But Daewoo makes it clear that it's the opposite. His decision is actually a gesture meant to put his faith in them. Daewoo continues to hack away at the attacking Neo-Nox monsters, while R's ghost appears in front of Mira to pretty much tell her that this fateful meeting between herself and Daewoo was inevitable. Nearby, Daewoo has just eliminated scores upon scores of the Neo-Nox monsters. He apologizes to Xiao Chen for being unable to kill Mira. He then hugs his ex, while Xiao Chen's soul and the spirits of all the other fallen Nox members ultimately bend the knee to the Jade Emperor. An energy blast threatens Mira and Daewoo, so he puts the robe of the sage on her. When Mira asks why he's doing this, Daewoo once again confesses his feelings for her, which finally allows Mira's conditioning to be broken. In other words, Mira's back to her old self, guys. She finally remembers Daewoo and the two lovers pretty much get back together. The problem is, it might be too late, since Tathagata is almost resurrected. In turn, Daewoo tells Mira that it doesn't matter if it's too late, and if the power of God can't stop the holy place, maybe their powers as humans would do the trick. From there, Mira and Daewoo band together to prevent the holy place from feeding Tathagata's revival. Daewoo hands her his blade, and after a bit of a pep talk, Mira and Daewoo combine their respective sage abilities to unleash a devastating technique that wrecks the holy place. Mira and Daewoo then share an embrace. Daewoo apologizes to her for not keeping his promise of not dying 17 years ago before telling her that everything's going to be alright now. As for Mira, well, our girl declares that she's finally back. In the aftermath of the chaos, world government drones scour New Korea to check the damage done to the city. Meanwhile, Mira's Nox underlings approach to check up on her. We learn that Mira's gone blind from overexerting herself earlier with their ultimate move. She apologizes to her underlings for not being able to protect all of them before cradling her dead kid. On the bright side, we soon find out that Ilpyo's leadership in the rescue and evacuation efforts of the city have proven to be super effective. But even Ilpyo himself is not aware that it's his own efforts that brought this success. He asks Daewoo if he's the one responsible for healing all the wounded citizens, but our hero says no. Meanwhile, Mira uses her sage abilities to save her surviving Nox minions, while Daewoo activates his powers to literally reconstruct an entire city block to the way it was before this whole mess. World government agents and Ilpio himself can't believe this anticlimactic turn of events, but they all do agree that the combined power of the Jade Emperor's mind and body are extraordinary. And just like that, it's as if New Korea didn't just go through yet another city-destroying catastrophe. As for how the citizens are able to be healed, we soon learn that it's all thanks to the world government's Wi-Fi, which Ilpio activated to help New Korea's people. Somewhere in the city, Ahan witnesses a couple of kids getting rescued thanks to Wi-Fi, while she promises to stop being a burden and proceeds to continue helping in the rescue efforts. In an even more absurd turn of events, Ilpio clearly declares that there were 0 civilian casualties in the chaos that just preceded, and it's all thanks to Mujin's invention, the Wi-Fi. He tells Daewoo about this, and our hero first reassures Ilpio that the world government needs a leader like him. On the other hand, Daewoo's still not entirely convinced that Mujin's Wi-Fi system is actually a good thing, considering that, well, Mujin was the one behind its creation. Back in the middle of New Korea, Mira buries her kid and all the other fallen Nox members. Daewoo also spots Xiao Chen's lifeless body and pays respect to it before turning to dust. Afterwards, Daewoo checks up on Mira, who tells him she's really not okay. This stems from the fact that Mira thinks she wanted to become the supreme god in a bid to protect her Nox underlings, which ultimately turned her into a monster. But both Mira and Daewoo know that the mastermind behind this entire mess is none other than Mandoc. Mira returns the robe of the sage to Daewoo and declares that she's willing to accept any punishment for the things she had done in the past 17 years. But before that, she'd really love it if she can smack Mandoc even just once. Too bad though, because Mira's too gassed out to join Daewoo in the hunt for Mandoc. She passes out from exhaustion, so Daewoo leaves her with her Nox followers for now. He's not too worried about getting separated from her this time, however, because Daewoo is aware that finding each other will be easy now that his and Mira's mind and body are now connected. In the end, Daewoo prepares to continue his mission, to make all those bastards responsible for this chaos to pay for their crimes. God of High School then shifts its focus to the Holy Place, just a few minutes before Daewoo and Mira's duel ends. Here we see Dean and the remaining Generation X members fighting off the soldiers loyal to Jonathan. Dean still has issues taking out these unnamed grunts, since he used to fight with them not too long ago. His resolve is tested when one of the random soldiers attempts to detonate a bomb right in front of Dean in a suicide attack. Dean is able to stop this from happening with help from his precognition. He then asks the soldier why they're doing this, especially considering they all used to be work buddies, but the soldier remains petulant, which almost makes Dean cave his face in. However, Dean pulls back at the last second and just walks away. No problem though, because Good Gun finishes the job for Team Generation X's leader by killing this random soldier. Good Gun then accosts Dean for not getting with the program. Even more, Good Gun tells him that he's finally realized that they're really different from regular humans the longer he fights them. Good Gun's lecture stops when he and Dean feel Tathagata's presence in the Holy Place. A second later, Dean and Team Generation X get a vision of the Holy Place's collapse, so Dean focuses up and tells everyone to get into position. The narrator then goes on to show that each and every step of the prophecy leading to Tathagata's revival is going smoothly. First, there's the sign of the beast, which happens to be Mujin's Wi-Fi. Then there's the new Son of Man, which are the Generation X kids and their resonance power. And finally, there's the third part of the prophecy, the Rain of Blood, which is the power that's sucked up from Mira and the Neo-Nox members. In the present, Mandoc gets super hyped about the resurrection ritual nearing its completion. In the meantime, Dean sees another vision that isn't shared with readers just yet. However, he's forced to brush it off for now when he almost gets poked in the eye with a needle. Bongram protects Dean from the attack, and we next learn that this came from a soldier belonging to Team Shadow, a group of operatives made up of Generation X prototypes. Team Shadow attacks, and Bongram tries to hit one of them with her staff. Surprisingly, her weapon curls and gets mangled before it can even strike the soldier. The Team Shadow operative then introduces himself to Bongram, while she fixes her staff and literally draws a line in the sand, telling their attackers they're dead if they cross the boundary. Meanwhile, Dean tells everyone to stay in position because the sacred place is about to collapse any time now. At the same time, Team Shadow decides to attack P, but Mujin is able to save her just in time. P then decides to provide Mujin some cover while he approaches a mysterious pedestal. Mandoc then approaches P and tells her to hand over whatever she has in her hands. P agrees and prepares to open a box. Somewhere else, Mori stops in his tracks while we learn the contents of the same box P just opened. It's the Monkey King's crown, and she hands it over to Mujin instead of Mandoc. Mujin then goes on a quick monologue to explain the specs of the Monkey King's crown. Its formal name is the Golden Fillet, and everyone thinks it's used to seal the god's power. But as Mujin reveals, the Golden Fillet is actually designed to control it. So Mujin puts on the crown and further reveals that the holy place is actually Gaia's womb, the same place where Mori was born. After that, Mujin takes a quick trip down memory lane as he channels Mansuk's power. Back to Mori, our hero sees an apparition of his old partner, Wang Zhang, the same woman he ate eons ago as the Monkey King. Back in the holy place, Mandoc attacks Mujin, which causes the golden fillet to fly off his head. And at this point, their temporary alliance has reached its natural conclusion when the two old rivals get into one of their classic scuffles. Mujin then reveals that Mori woke up from his eons-long slumber just a few weeks before Mandoc awoke the god and Mansuk died. This all happened 34 years ago. Meanwhile, Wang Zhang's ghost points Mori to the holy place's location. Things heat up as Mandoc and Mujin get ready for another fight, while both Mori and Dewi each continue their hunt for these villains. But don't hold your breath for an epic showdown between some god of high school's biggest players just yet, because we get another flashback instead. Our story's next chapter opens with more narration about the prophecy leading to Tathagata's resurrection. We already know most of it, but at least we do get some new information here as well. First, the prophecy goes on to say that the Supreme God will bring legions of his demons down to Earth. Apocalypse more or less happens because of this, but then the so-called prophet will emerge from the chaos. According to the prophecy, this prophet's going to sacrifice himself to the Supreme God to save humanity from its sins and unite humankind with the gods. In the end, the prophet will bring balance between gods, humans, and demons, and by extension, the entire universe. A flashback then reveals a time when Nox was deliberating where Mandoc or Mansuk should be the one to ascend to prophethood. And in not as many words, this whole sequence ends with Nox's council basically voting for Mandoc. The flashback then shifts its focus toward Mujin, where he wakes up after having a dream featuring everything that has recently happened to him, from getting beaten by Taijin to getting his face slapped by Mansuk. That day, Mujin goes for a walk to clear his head after having these weird dreams lately when he suddenly spots Mansuk arguing with a street vendor. Mujin starts tailing her, and pretty much learns that Mansuk's a garden variety brat when she manspreads all over the subway train seats reserved for pregnant women and the elderly. Mujin continues stalking this obnoxious redhead and next witnesses her harassing a random old lady on the street. Mansuk soon spots Mujin and proves she deserves a gold medal for being an insufferable swine when she slaps him. No greetings, no warnings, just pure unprovoked physical assault. Still, Mujin continues following Mansuk and they eventually stumble upon a van parked illegally on a sidewalk. Mansuk acts like the delinquent that she is and starts kicking the boxes stacked in the open compartment of the van. The owner of the vehicle begs her to stop and prepares to move the van away from the sidewalk, but Mansuk's really getting her rocks off kicking these boxes. She only stops when Mujin intervenes. But then a cop arrives after answering a distress call and arrests both Mujin and the van's owner. At the police station, we find out that the van's owner is actually guilty of drunk driving. Mujin is released afterwards, and later that day, he finds out that this same van owner has been arrested for being the prime suspect in a string of gruesome serial murders that happened a few years ago in the city. This starts to pique Mujin's interest, because it's either Mansuk knew that the man was a serial killer in the first place, or she really just has a talent for failing upwards. So Mujin soon searches for Mansuk in the city again. He eventually spots her one day beating an old man with a pipe. Mujin intervenes and stops Mansuk from committing homicide. However, Mujin suddenly starts listing the crimes that this old man has done in the past. We're not going through each one of them, but let's just say this man does deserve his brains to be splattered with a metal pipe when you learn what he's been up to. In fact, this geezer even tries to murder Mansuk with a shard of glass he picked up from the ground. But Mujin protects her, and the old convict tucks tail and runs. It's here that Mujin figures out that Mansuk isn't just a cute redhead suffering from anger management issues. She can actually read people's minds, which partly explains why she's been targeting seemingly random people this whole time. Make no mistake though, Mansuk isn't some hero. She actually hates people, especially knowing the filthy thoughts running around their mind 24/7. But more than that, Mansuk hates herself for being the recipient of Mandoc's organs. Mansuk goes on an exposition dump about canned goods, but we've already covered that earlier, so we're not going to go through it again. The point is, Mansuk feels bad for using her adopted brother as a canned good. Mansuk's emotional breakdown makes Mujin realize that she's not so different from him. But, as is typical of Mujin, he teases her and calls Mansuk a piece of crap after her long monologue. Mansuk has a tantrum, but Mujin clarifies that they're both pieces of crap, and there's nothing wrong with that. Plus, she shouldn't worry about Mandoc too much, because the dude is actually happy with his life in spite of being a canned good. Mujin then goes on to tell Mansuk to not be so down, because who knows, maybe someone like her, Mandoc, or a genius like himself could change the world one of these days. However, Mujin lets his guard down in the middle of this conversation, which makes him fail to notice that Mansuk has been reading his mind in the middle of his monologue. And in true Mujin fashion, our dude is super impressed with himself while in the middle of giving Mansuk his speech. Hell, he even gets worried this cute weird redhead's going to fall in love with him. Mansuk then calls Mujin for his own crap and basically tells him that, yes, they are alike insofar as they're a couple of weak people who don't believe in themselves. Mujin then gives Mansuk an ego boost by telling her she has tremendous talent, but Mansuk reads his mind and learns his true thoughts. Regardless, teenage hormones always beat rude inner thoughts, so Mansuk grabs Mujin and they kiss. Unknown to them, Mandok has been sitting in his wheelchair in a corner this whole time, watching Mujin and Mansuk pretty much turn into a romantic couple in a matter of minutes. Mandok doesn't seem to be too happy about this, so he rolls his way out of there. Unknown to Mujin, Mansuk, or Mandok, Okwang is currently in Nox's inner sanctum, as he declares that a new bishop is about to be born. Okwang wonders if this same person is the real prophet, and as in the present, Okwang's goal during this period is to resurrect Tathagata as well. Our story continues with a flashback within a flashback that reveals why Mandok has suddenly gotten all mopey. It turns out that it's not purely about Mujin's new romantic entanglement with Mansuk. It's because Mandok has found out from his doctor that he might die at any moment due to his condition. Back in the present, Mandok is just rolling his way out of the scene when one of the boys he messed with from before kicks his wheelchair. Our boy falls down and the boy gets ready to beat him senseless when Mujin arrives to defend Mandok. The boy tucks tail and runs, and Mandok appreciates Mujin's assistance before wheeling himself away. Mujin notices that Mandok was crying, and he gets a clue when he sees the boy's prescription on the ground. Later, Mansuk gets the heebie-jeebies from unwillingly reading other people's minds inside a subway station while waiting for Mujin. Mujin soon arrives and Mansuk gets a grip. They then go on a date, and this whole sequence is just a relatively unnecessary origin story about how Mujin got his trademark Hawaiian shirt. The long and short of it is that Mansuk chose it for him while on their date because she thought Mujin's wardrobe was too black. Along the way, Mansuk's powers kick in, and they spot a serial killer with her powers. Mujin tries to do something about it, but Mansuk tells him to let it go because they don't have any concrete proof. Mansuk then gets all mopey and tells Mujin how she hates having her powers. So Mujin takes her to a food drive where Mandok is volunteering to serve hobos some soup. Mujin pretty much tells Mansuk that if a crippled canned good like Mandok can do amazing things like volunteer work, then the two of them sure as hell can make things work for themselves. Their conversation takes a sadder turn, however, when both Mujin and Mansuk reveal that they know about Mandok's illness. So they take this opportunity to sing the boys' praises and basically tell each other how awesome a person Mandok is. In the end, Mujin tells Mansuk to be more confident, and she starts to believe him. Another flashback within this flashback reveals the first time Mansuk saw Mujin, which was during a time when Mandok was binge-watching videos of Mujin's The Six audition. Meanwhile, Mansuk tells Mujin that seeing him makes her want to have a little bit of faith in humanity, and we finally get the origin story behind Mujin's pendant. It's a keepsake that Mansuk gave him during the same date. Anyway, Mujin and Mansuk continue to hang out. She gets into a bit of trouble when she tries to start a fight with one of the homeless people cutting in line for that soup. Everybody had a good time, and best yet, Mandok gave Mujin his blessing to date Mansuk. But as expected, Mandok soon succumbed to his illness. But we all know this nutjob didn't die. He just broke. He broke so bad, in fact, that one of the first things he did after quote-unquote recovering from his sickness is murder the boy who messed with him earlier in the flashback. Soon enough, Nox's bonkers ceremony to revive their supreme god arrived. Here we see Mansuk about to fully claim the title of prophet in the cult. However, Mandok intervenes and lays his claim to the position. What shocks everyone in the room, even Mansuk, is that Mandok suddenly isn't paraplegic anymore. The boy stood from his wheelchair on his own 2 feet. In turn, every cultist in the room starts worshipping Mandok. We then get the reveal from the day before that Mansuk told Mujin that a miracle was happening at Nox, which caused Mujin some panic. This is then fleshed out in the next chapter of God of High School, as we see Mujin and Mansuk on another date. Their conversation starts lightly enough, with Mujin explaining why he changed his legal name from Mubong to Mujin. Long story short, Mujin thought his birth name sounded too old-fashioned. In any case, Mujin and Mansuk get all lovey-dovey again, but Mansuk then gets to the part where she tells Mujin about the miracle happening at Nox the next day. Specifically, Mansuk tells him that this is going down at the Coex construction site, the same place where our heroes and villains are currently duking it out in the present. Later that day, Mujin does some training while getting over his insecurities, and Mujin Park gets back on track when our story moves the clock to the day after. Mujin makes his way to the Coex construction site, but he comes across a trio of Nox bishops during the trek. Mujin then starts some static with the bishops, and one of them, the now dead Byron, slams him into a wall. Byron tells Mujin that he's curious whether Nox's newest candidate, Mandok, is really the prophet they've been waiting for, or if he'll end up as a bishop like them. Another bishop tells Byron to calm the hell down, and he more or less obeys. Weirdly enough though, Byron starts asking Mujin about the location of Jahonda Song, the Monkey King. Back at Nox's lair, Mandoc starts getting even crazier when he starts magically healing the other cultists around him. Mansuk's dad, a guy known as Elder Kim, brands Mandoc as a false prophet. So he confronts this scumbag and dictates the long list of atrocities he's committed on Mandoc and everyone else. Right after that, Mandoc thanks Elder Kim for helping him be reborn into this messiah figure for Nox. Another flashback within this flashback reveals that a mysterious entity showed up in front of Mandoc just as he was about to die from his sickness. This entity then awakened his hidden potential, which explains how he suddenly got all powerful. Back in Nox's lair, Mandoc leans in hard on the whole prophet act and starts dictating the cult's prophecies and kills Elder Kim with one of his giant swords. Seeing Elder Kim get crushed like a bug makes all the other Nox cultists worship Mandoc harder. But this dude has gone off the deep end, so he kills everyone in the room too, because to Mandoc, the prophecy all leads to him. Oh, and Mansuk can only watch in fear while this all goes down. Outside, Byron tells Mujin that he woke up the Monkey King a few days ago and blames him for starting another vicious cycle for 1,000 years. Mujin has no idea what this nutjob is talking about, so Byron decides to take him out right then and there. It doesn't work though, because Mansuk's pendant lights up and protects Mujin. The bishops decide to walk it off and just leave Mujin alone in the end. Not long after, Mandoc, Mansuk, and the rest of Nox head over to the Coex construction site to begin the ceremony to awaken Tathagata. As is typical of scummy cults, the followers are ordered to drink a questionable beverage, which makes them even more suggestible while they pray. One of the elders then gives Mandoc a couple of artifacts, a crown of thorns and an energy stone. The energy stone sucks off the Nox cultist's life force, and it's at this point that Mansuk realizes that maybe her cult is evil or something. She tries to comfort one of the dying cultists, while Mandoc gets even more insane now that he's gotten an energy boost, because in Mandoc's mind, he now has power on the same level as Mujin. Mandoc gloats about his newfound abilities to Mansuk, telling her that he's not weak anymore. In turn, Mansuk sort of takes pity on her little adopted brother and tells him that he was never weak to begin with. At the same time, Mujin rushes towards the Coex construction site and panics, given that he has no idea what's going on. We then get even more flashbacks here, as we see the Monkey King having a talk with Wanzang about why she spends her time trying to help humanity. Wanzang says that it's because even humans can reach nirvana with her help, and if she can make them happy because of it, that's enough of a reason for her. At the construction site, Mansuk wishes her brother well, as she prays and spirits suddenly appear and argue with one another all around her. While this is happening, Okwang is in his inner sanctum wondering if Tathagata is finally going to be reborn. Returning to the Monkey King flashback, Wanzang invites him to join her in India. It's revealed that Okwang orchestrated all this to make the Monkey King Wanzang's bodyguard on a pilgrimage to India meant to turn her into a true prophet. Back at the Coex site, Mujin finally arrives to see Mandoc with an insane grin on his face. He tells Mujin that he's finally summoned the Supreme God just as a grotesque monster approaches. Returning to the other flashback, the Monkey King has just taken out an entire army and prepares to snuff each one of them. However, our hero falls dead in his tracks when Wanzang intervenes and threatens to subdue him with a technique known as the Loop Tightener. But Wanzang instead hugs and kisses the Monkey King before promising that she'll never use the Loop Tightener on him ever again. All our hero has to do is whatever Wanzang says, or she'll kiss him. In any case, she and the Monkey King continue their journey toward India and become closer along the way. They eventually find themselves trapped inside the so-called gold and silver gourd bottle. The Monkey King decides to save Wanzang from this prison, but she refuses because she doesn't want to leave our hero alone. Things get bad for the duo, but they're eventually rescued by the townspeople and royal army, who are now singing Wanzang's praises. Their journey to India soon continues, and we see that the Monkey King has started to show some restraint after being inspired by Wanzang's actions. Later, while taking a break from their trek, our hero asks out Wanzang on a date to Oragok, but she doesn't give him a straight answer. Instead, she tells her hero to ask her again once she's finished her trial. The two eventually arrive in India, where Tathagata greets them. Back to the Mujin flashback, we finally get the big reveal that Mandoc has summoned a god. Everyone around understandably identifies this demonic-looking figure as Maitreya, and their belief is further strengthened when the entity seemingly performs miracles all around the construction site, mainly resurrecting a baby from the dead. Mujin lays eyes on the creature and gets instantly intimidated. As he puts it, if the bishops from earlier were like animals, this creature is more similar to a beast. The creature then teleports in front of Mujin and tries to open his throat, but Mandoc succeeds in telling it to back off. Mandoc then tells Mujin he wants to show him a miracle. As the entity walks toward Mansuk, it goes on to try and scare off Mansuk, but she remains defiant. And when Mandoc tries to intervene, he instantly feels his illness come back. Not only that, but we get the reveal that this creature didn't perform miracles earlier. In fact, we find out that it actually turned the baby it seemingly revived earlier into an undead monster. The creature tells Mansuk it's going to eat her so it can summon the supreme god. This makes Mansuk realize that the demonic-looking figure in front of them is not Maitreya. It's more likely that this creature is just Maitreya's number 2 or number 3. And fair play to Mansuk because this girl knows how to punch above her pay grade. Instead of getting scared, Mansuk runs her mouth in front of the creature. Mandoc recovers from his fit and tells the entity to spare his sister and take him instead. But it refuses and even goes so far as to tell Mandoc that he's not supposed to be the prophet. He just stole his powers from Mansuk via power transference. The creature then lashes out and tries to kill everyone in the immediate vicinity, but Mujin activates his powers to defend themselves. It sort of works, but Mujin notices that his attack didn't damage the creature at all. And as he says, this is where their nightmare started. Somewhere else, in the middle of a subway station, the 6-member Han Rang-seo wakes up from his nap when he senses trouble nearby. He soon encounters the 3 same bishops that accosted Mujin earlier. Plus, Han Riang isn't alone. He's joined by a couple of the 6 members, namely Chang Ju-moon and Jason Jeon. Byron greets him by saying that he knows about them, but being the dummy that he is, he thinks that there are 7 in their group. In any case, a standoff ensues, as 3 of the 6 members face off against the bishops, with Byron being accompanied by Xiao Chen and Romario. Back at the construction site, the creature starts acting like a bona fide scumbag when it starts feeding on the life force of the Nox followers in the area. It even messes with the kid by making him choose which one the entity should kill next. Mujin tries to rescue the boy, but the creature is able to take out the kid. And from there, more tomfoolery ensues, as the entity continues murdering any person it can find in the immediate vicinity. Meanwhile, Mujin gets shell-shocked when he realizes he's powerless to stop this creature from wreaking havoc. Mandoc tries to use his powers to subdue the beast, but he just gets mocked instead. On top of that, the creature messes with Mandoc's self-esteem further when it tells him that the only reason he got his powers was because of Mansuk's power transference ability. It finally introduces itself as the god Beelzebub, while Mujin attempts to go for another attack against this monster. But Mujin knows his attacks don't work on Beelzebub, so he considers the option of taking out Mandoc instead, thinking that it might damage the god. However, Mansuk jumps in and tells Mujin that it's not the right thing to do. Mujin pulls back and thanks his girlfriend for stopping him from becoming a monster like Beelzebub. Mujin once again targets the evil god in front of them, but Beelzebub gets the jump on him and stabs Mujin with one of his stingers. What Beelzebub doesn't know is that Mujin did this on purpose to subdue him. As Mujin puts it, if he can't hurt Beelzebub's body, then he can take the both of them out by blowing a hole in the ground with his powers. Mujin springs his attack, and the two fall into the hole in the ground. Beelzebub stabs Mujin again, but we get the big reveal that the reason he's still alive after getting skewered a couple of times is because Han Riang and Jason gave Mujin a gift in the past. Literal plot armor. The two combatants fall so deep underground that they reach the holy place, which according to Beelzebub is actually India. He then goes on an exposition dump about the things that have happened in this place, and it's nothing new. We already know them by this point, from the fact that this was where the gods first entered the human world to how the whole idea of borrowed power came into existence. In the Monkey King flashback, Wanzang refuses to ascend to prophethood and tells Tathagata that paradise that comes at someone else's expense isn't really paradise at all. Plus, she doesn't want to get sacrificed now that she's in a relationship with the Monkey King. Tathagata says Wanzang did achieve true enlightenment just now, and for that, humanity will be exterminated. Tathagata shows his true face when he goes so far as to threaten to literally chop up the Monkey King into tiny pieces he can share with the other gods. At the construction site, Mansuk comforts Mandoc and tells him that she believes he's the real prophet. Beelzebub attacks the siblings, but Mansuk protects themselves with a force field. So this scumbag god starts hurling innocent people at Mansuk in hopes of making her bring down her shield. Mujin desperately tries to save Mansuk and tells himself that he's willing to give up his own life to save his girlfriend. All of a sudden, Han Riang and the bishops notice a cross forming above the skies of South Korea. Mujin has basically unleashed a powerful technique down at the holy place. It culminates in Beelzebub getting bisected, but it comes at a cost, as it's revealed that Mansuk used herself as a human shield to prevent Beelzebub from stabbing Mujin once again. It's a questionable move at best, since Beelzebub clearly says that Mujin wouldn't have taken any damage from his attack because he's wearing Mansuk's pendant, which actually happens to be a national treasure called the Holy Cross that Mansuk herself had made. Mansuk soon dies, and there's this whole sequence where Mujin Park basically shows us that the tragedies Mujin and Mori have experienced throughout their lives aren't so different at all. The long and short of it is that both Mujin and the Monkey King had girlfriends who the gods had killed in the past. But more to the point, Beelzebub recovers from being severed in half, while Okwang says that the tragedy of the prophet is repeating itself. Mujin loses it after seeing Mansuk get badly wounded, so he and Beelzebub get into a clash again. Shortly after, Mujin tries to help Mansuk get to safety, but Beelzebub takes a huge chomp out of her back. And now Beelzebub has gotten a taste for profit, so he gets even more aggressive. Mujin tries to step up to the evil god once again, but he gets his butt kicked. So much so that Mujin starts wondering if they'd be in this mess if Taijin was the one who fought this creature. On the bright side, Mandoc is able to hinder Beelzebub's movements for a bit when he attacks the entity. But this just ultimately makes Beelzebub even hungrier for human flesh, so he attempts to devour everyone in the immediate vicinity. But then, Okwang suddenly arrives and puts Beelzebub in his place with his gravitational powers. The two gods get into an argument, and Okwang pretty much tells Beelzebub that he'd be committing treason against the gods if he attacks him. Beelzebub initially remains petulant, but this idiot finally learns his place when Okwang unsheathes the blade of Tathagata and carves him up with it. Beelzebub is soon banished back to the godly realm, all the while running his mouth about taking the blade of Tathagata from Okwang the next time they meet. The dust settles, and Mujin desperately tries to call for Mansook. Of course, this does nothing to heal her wounds, and Mansook soon succumbs to her injuries. Mujin passes out, but not before seeing glimpses of Mandoc taking Mansook's lifeless body to Okwang before leaving. Later, the six-member Onyo pays a visit to the sacred place where she has a chance meeting with Okwang. We then find out a week later that this whole mess at the construction site was covered up by authorities. Mujin pays a visit to Mansook's grave, where he's soon joined by Onyo. Onyo debriefs Mujin about Nox, and this sequence pretty much lays out all the things that have happened up to this point in the series, from Onyo's decision to gather the keys to defeat the gods to the reason they got into a scuffle with Taijin. If you didn't know it already, the Six tried to beat Taijin in order to retrieve the newly awakened Monkey King, Mori, and use him as a weapon against Okwang and the others. God of High School's next chapter serves more as a recap of everything that's happened in the series. We learn that Mujin started hunting down Nox hideouts all over the city. As a matter of fact, this is around the same period when Mujin first met P, who then proceeded to become his aide from then on out. In the end, Mujin realizes that hunting down Nox is an inefficient way to gather the keys they need. So he ultimately comes up with the idea to establish the God of High School tournament as a way to secretly gather the keys that would help humanity defeat the gods. On top of that, Mujin eventually became a congressman as part of his plans to destroy the gods. In a different period and different flashback altogether, Mandoc asks Okwang if he could make Beelzebub the source of his primeval borrowed power. It's also here where Mandoc first got the idea of becoming a supreme god to resurrect Mansook. Back in the Mujin flashback, we get to see him meet R for the first time, and the sequence thankfully moves forward to the first season of God of High School, when Mandoc had already ascended to become a Nox bishop while Mujin and his crew preside over the God of High School tournament. The flashback moves forward again, this time to a day before Ragnarok, where Mujin pays Mansook's grave a visit to tell her that his plan has almost come to fruition. Mandoc does the same at an unspecified time, and this whole sequence's point is that Mujin and Mandoc are basically doing the things they do as a way to honor Mansook. To Mujin, it's about killing the gods. To Mandoc, it's about reviving his adopted sister. The flashback then goes on a SparkNotes version of everything that happened in Ragnarok. And finally, after so many chapters, we finally come back to the present where Mujin and Mandoc have finally started their duel. Mujin and Mandoc's duel continues to heat up, and we get a somewhat unnecessary flashback showing Jonathan's motives for targeting the world president. It turns out that aside from killing Jonathan, Jonathan just hates Mujin for insulting him during their first meeting, which explains why he has an absolute revenge plot going on for the man. More importantly, Mujin and Mandoc's fateful clash proves to be a reasonable enough reward for making us go through the barrage of flashbacks we got in the earlier chapters. Their duel opens with Mujin overwhelming Mandoc with his Legion Spears technique, which climaxes when the world president summons the Spear of Longinus. Mandoc can barely keep up, and he soon finds himself in a cross-shaped hole in the ground after Mujin runs him down with his 1200 Spears of Longinus ability. But Mandoc isn't down for the count just yet. He summons his own blades to stop Mujin's momentum, and it works magnificently. Mujin is forced to go on the defensive. Even worse, he knows his balance is off due to his missing arm. But Mujin pulls out all the stops and rushes his arch-nemesis to apply a couple of Bong Chim Na-style pressure point strikes to Mandoc's knees. The two warriors get into it at close range once again. They trade blows, while Mujin hypes himself by screaming how much of a genius he is. And when Mandoc asks what his point is, Mujin simply tells him that only one of them is walking out of this place alive. At the same time, we find out that Mori is currently seeing the same Mujin flashback that we went through earlier while he runs through the portal that Wan Zhang's ghost pointed him to. Back at the sacred place, Mujin and Mandoc keep duking it out while reminiscing about their past. Mandoc loses his focus a bit when Jonathan's soldiers arrive to intervene, forcing him to take them out first before turning his attention back to Mujin. Once more, these two old friends get into another clash while remembering their past. Mandoc gets the better of Mujin when he drives his hand through his rival's chest. Mandoc starts to think that Mujin has run out of energy, but the world president proves he's a problem when he pools his remaining strength and manages to fend off Mandoc. From there, the two old friends get into a grueling close-quarters scuffle. No corny techniques, no flashbacks, just pure ground-and-pound action. Mujin ultimately mounts Mandoc and pummels his face. Emotions are running high as Mujin blames Mandoc for Mansuk's death. Mandoc eventually counters with a headbutt and catches Mujin off guard. In turn, he blames himself for Mansuk's death. But, as is always the case with Mandoc, he defends his stance by telling Mujin that he's trying to resurrect Maitreya to bring his sister back to life. It's here that Mujin tells him to get a grip and forget about his bonkers plan to revive the Supreme God. Mujin then reveals that Mansuk's legacy lives on through Generation X, because the long and short of it is that Mujin engineered these mutants to carry Mansuk's power transference ability. But Mandoc's too far gone. He really thinks that there's no other prophet or worthy vessel for the Supreme God than himself. Another somewhat unnecessary flashback shows Mujin telling P how he and Mandoc used to be friends. Thankfully it's short, and we soon get back to the present where Mujin and Mandoc go at it again. Their clash ends up in a stalemate, so Mujin channels all his remaining energy to summon the one and holy spear. In response, Mandoc activates his primeval borrowed power, the god of 6 pairs of wings. The two warriors know their next clash would be the last one, so they psych themselves up and lunge at each other one final time. Things happen so fast that it looks like these two dudes suddenly started hugging each other. But this is no brotherly embrace. As P reveals, both Mujin and Mandoc are planning to die together during this clash. Mandoc and Mujin manage to squeeze in one last conversation about Mansuk in the middle of their power hug, and it's yet just another retread of the flashback we just had to sit through earlier. In the present, Mandoc reveals that there's only one person that his sister didn't hate in this world, which happens to be Mujin. Even better, we get some immediate payoff to this climactic clash when Mandoc all but confirms that he lost this duel, as he makes one final request to Mujin to allow Tathagata to be revived. Mujin still refuses, however, while a dying Mandoc wonders if Mansuk's power protected Mujin from their final clash. Mandoc finally drops to the ground. His life flashes before his eyes, and this main villain finally bites the dust. With Mandoc dead, Mujin walks away from the battlefield and reiterates his vow to prioritize humankind above all else. But more trouble soon arrives when Jonathan's soldiers install cameras all over the sacred place and broadcast a live feed of their fat, balding boss. Jonathan proves he's one of the most superfluous characters in the series when he makes an appearance just to do what he's been doing since the very start. Gloat about his perceived imminent victory and mock Mujin. He then orders his men to shoot down the world president, but Good Gun jumps in and takes a bullet for his boss. In fact, we find out that Jonathan has a case of garden variety 1%er mentality when the dude pulls out a handheld camera and films Mujin in hopes of seeing him cry on screen. Mujin has other ideas though. Instead of doing what Jonathan had hoped, Mujin tries to assassinate this scummy billionaire with his power, forcing a bunch of his bodyguards to form up around him. And credit where credit is due, because Mujin obliges Jonathan. As he puts it, if Jonathan wants to make him look like a villain, then Mujin is more than happy to be the baddest son of a gun he's ever seen. Jonathan gets cheeky, as Good Gun's arm, the same one he used to protect Mujin from a bullet just now, suddenly twists and writhes. Jonathan reveals that he's using Mujin's nanomachines to remotely attack Good Gun and all the other Generation X members. But Dean is easily able to nullify this move by healing Good Gun's arm. Afterwards, Dean attempts to use his healing abilities on P, but she refuses and reveals her pregnancy to the boy. Nearby, Good Gun tells Mujin to get his head in the game. The world president does so, as Jonathan's men open fire at him. The bullets do nothing to Mujin, so the soldiers turn toward Mandoc's corpse. Jonathan gets his rocks off by telling his underlings to gun down Mandoc's lifeless body while he films it. They rain bullets down on Mandoc's corpse, which grinds Mujin's gears so bad that he crushes the soldiers with his gravitational powers. That's because in spite of the heated rivalry they had, Mujin doesn't deny that Mandoc is one of the most important people in his life. From there, Jonathan orders his men to just kill everyone in sight. Mujin's recent attack on the soldiers makes him drop his guard. He fails to see the Team Shadow member about to backstab him, so P is forced to defend her boss. One Team Shadow member operative grabs P while another tackles Mujin. Meanwhile, Dean mobilizes the remaining Team Generation X members to help rescue P and the world president. Dean manages to get Mujin out of trouble, while Bongram takes out each and every sniper in the area. But this leaves P open to be mounted by the other Team Shadow member. Always the stand-up guy, Dean attempts to save P, but Gutgun intervenes and pulls him back. He tells Dean that it's too late for P, which is stupid because it's clear that Dean has more than enough time to rescue her. Plus, it's also super telling that Gutgun just wants P to die when he tells Dean that she's a failure. Mujin watches on as the Team Shadow member prepares to drive his spear into P's chest. And although Bongram is able to kill this mindless operative, she doesn't make it in time to rescue P. Mujin's most loyal executive still ends up getting stabbed. Of course, Dean is furious that Gutgun prevented him from rescuing P. And it's here we find out that Gutgun has fully done a heel turn, as he pretty much tells Dean and Mujin that humans are worthless because Generation X is the next step in evolution. Mujin realizes that Gutgun is basically echoing his own opinions about humans in Generation X. Meanwhile, Jonathan is simply enjoying this. After all, there's nothing funnier than an idiot racist getting told off by another idiot racist. Jonathan's goons then open fire on the group once again, and it's at this point that this part of the story, which happens to be actually yet another flashback if you guys recall, catches up to the present, when Mira and Dewi toppled over the sacred place. Right now, Gutgun has just shielded Mujin from the soldiers' gunfire. Gutgun tells Mujin that he's the only person in the world who treated Generation X babies like him as human beings, so he has Gutgun's loyalty to the end. From there, Gutgun places the golden fillet on Mujin's head so that he can proceed with his grand vision. Meanwhile, Bongram checks up on P and notices that the baby in her belly is still alive. Mujin then starts activating the golden fillet, but Mori finally arrives on the scene and yells at Mujin to stop. Our hero makes easy work of all of Jonathan's forces, but he suddenly feels powerful energy within the sacred place. This stems from Mujin's activation of the golden fillet, and the next thing Mujin knows, he's inside a strange library where he comes face to face with Mansuk. Here's the thing though, this is not really Mansuk. As the girl explicitly tells Mujin, she's an agent of Maitreya, and she only looks like Mansuk because she borrowed an image from Mujin's mind to interact with him. The representative finds it strange that Mujin's body possesses the energy of so many prophets within him, to which he replies that it's a no-brainer because he's going to kill Maitreya. The representative then asks him if he's really sure about that before explaining that Mujin is currently in an imaginary place completely separate from the outside world. We finally get to the point of this whole meeting. The representative wants Mujin to choose whether he wants to be one with the Supreme God so he can revive his baby in P, or he can go with his lifelong plan of finally killing Maitreya, which also means that Mori would kill Mujin next. A mercifully quick flashback shows Mujin's past for the umpteenth time. Nothing new here, so we'll just move on and tell you that God of High School's plot finally progresses when Dean has a vision of what Mujin's going to choose. Meanwhile, in the imaginary place, the representative urges Mujin to make his choice. In the real world, Mujin suddenly breaks from his trance and utters his decision. Before he can say it though, Dean jumps in and drives his hand through Mujin's back. In the imaginary place, the representative continues to goad Mujin into hurrying up and finalizing his choice, all the while taunting him about his failures. At the same time, Bongram lunges at Dean in the real world to confront Dean for what he just did to Mujin. In reply, Dean tells his teammate that he saw a vision of the world coming to an end. While this is happening, Jonathan is inside his manor raising a glass, thinking that he got the better of Mujin. Meanwhile, Mori tries to take out the world president in the holy place. We don't get the payoff for this just yet. Instead, we get a satisfying conclusion to Jonathan's exceedingly banal story arc when a blast of energy cleaves his manor in half, along with his right arm and legs. At the holy place, Mori's eyes widen when he gets a good look at Mujin. A second later, the world president raises his finger, which causes each and every one of Jonathan's goons' heads to pop like a cherry. The same thing happens to Jonathan's bodyguards back at his manor. And in the end, Jonathan himself becomes worm food when Mujin remotely uses his powers to make this fat munchkin's head explode like a grape before blowing up his entire mansion. Meanwhile, in New Korea, citizens who have recently taken to the streets to protest against Mujin in spite of the war going on suddenly spot the solar eclipse happening above the skies. At the same time, Odin and Satan get excited about leaving their native realm and going to the human world to greet Maitreya. On a much brighter note, Uma finally returns and prepares her demon army to go to the human realm and meet Beck. Somewhere else, Dewi spots an army of angels dropping down towards New Korea. He remembers Okwang telling him the prophecy, and if it's still not obvious, it's clear that after all his talk and bluster about the supremacy of the human race these past 5 volumes and all the crap he's orchestrated throughout this insane manhwa series, Mujin has chosen to throw his life's mission out of the window and choose to become Maitreya's vessel. All it took was the death of a pregnant executive. And now that Mujin has basically turned into the Supreme God, he stands in front of Mori and says that he has to make everything right again by changing the entire world. And there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for watching this Part 5 video of God of High School. We finally got a lot of revelations in this episode from Mujin and Madoc's past, and more about the history of Nox. The next video is going to be huge, so don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like the video if you haven't already. Once again, thank you everyone for your continued support of this series. We'll see you in the next video.